What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show here on the PFF YouTube channel. Also, shout out to everybody who's watching this episode on Twitter, streaming that one on Twitter for the first time. So welcome to the new audience. We're glad to have you with us. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That's Dalton Wasserman. We are going to go through every single game of the Sunday slate and go back to Thursday Night Football as well to review every single game in the NFL. We'll give you the top 5 graded players for every single team, give you some stats that mattered, the most disappointing, the most impressive, all that good stuff as we review all the action that we saw yesterday. Dalton, how are we feeling, my friend?
Fantastic. Another loaded weekend of football.
You were up at 5 a.m. this morning.
I was.
Because the tape was calling your name. That's what you said 30 seconds before we went live.
I mean, it's sort of that. Honestly, I knocked out early because we had a late night Saturday night watching all the college ball up till 2:30 in the morning watching that. And then we got maybe 2-3 hours of sleep before the college show on Sunday. And then I was up, obviously, watching yesterday, and then it probably knocked out early. Knocked out at like 8 o'clock. Honestly, did not watch the Sunday Night Football game live. Had to watch it this morning. I just knocked out. I was like, wow, I'm especially after the Georgia-Bama game Saturday night and everything that went down Saturday is just wild.
Well, I won't tell our boss that because you were one less rating for NBC, so I'll make sure that I leave that out next time that I talk to him. Yeah. But hey, you got the all 22 angle. It's all right. We got the tape early.
That's the best angle. It
really is. We appreciate everybody tuning into the show. We're gonna have a lot of fun on this show. Big time results that we had here in week 4 because, you know, Carmen was saying this when we were going through the preview show for this week. When she's talked with coaches, you know, throughout the last, 5 or 6 years that she's been covering the league, it's always a 4-week sample size, right? Just at least wait until week 4 until you start to draw conclusions. You start to see some trends on a lot of teams, and we're going to get into that as we give you all the PFF grades and all the PFF statistics that you know and love here. If you want to go see those yourself, you can go over to PFF.com, get yourself a PFF Plus subscription. That's the best way to follow along with the show, and even throughout the week, even when we're not live, you guys can get all the premium stats that you want by getting a PFF Plus subscription. Let's start with that Sunday Night Football game. I feel like that's the best way to start off this show because it's fresh in everybody's mind, and it was with 2 teams that have, playoff and Super Bowl aspirations in the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. Ravens take care of business, 35-10 in this one. Just, I don't want to say that it looked like it was out of reach the whole time for the Bills because there was a little bit of time in there where you went, okay, is Buffalo going to make some magic happen here? But on the scoreboard, it looks pretty one-sided, and that's because, you had a lot of really good players playing for Baltimore. So let's look at the top 5 players for the Ravens from last night. Kyle Van Noy at the very top of the list, the veteran, 93.9 overall grade in this game. Edge rusher Odafe right behind him as well, so the defensive line really standing up. 89.1. Fullback Patrick Ricard, love to get a fullback here early on in the show. 83.0. They were running the ball really good last night, so that's no surprise there. Speaking of running backs, Derrick Henry right there at number 4, 81.5, and then cornerback Nate Wiggins having a hell of a rookie season already so far, 4 games in with an 80.9. Quarterback Lamar Jackson would have been in that top 5, but we like to separate those guys to make sure we shout them out anyways. 88.8 last night. And then when we flip sides to the Buffalo Bills, the grades, as you would expect, not as high. Guard David Edwards with a 76.5 at the very top of the list. Center Connor McGovern with a 68.6. Wide receiver Keon Coleman, a 67.8. Cornerback Rasul Douglas, a 66.6. Wide receiver Khalil Shakir with a 66.1. And then Josh Allen right behind that with a 66.0. Dalton, as we often do for these game previews, we'll start with the stat that told the story in this result. What do you got from this?
I got to be honest with you. I think you should go first on this one because yours is the much more obvious one,
okay.
and I'll just build right off of it. I think to say anything but what you have here first would be kind of weird. It's the obvious is the obvious.
Okay, all right. So we can start with mine because, while you were grinding the all-22 tape, I was getting my notes in a little bit earlier, so
you win. So it's just I don't want to copy you either. No, that's rude.
That's fine. We could play off each other here and have a good conversation about it. It was the Ravens' run game efficiency, right? This is exactly what this team wants to do, and last night they did it. This could not have been a worse script for the Buffalo Bills and exactly what they wanted to do in this game. Not only were they on the road and you try to make the team a little bit comfortable, you try to put a little bit of pressure on the home team when you're coming in as the road dogs here, but I mean, there was just nothing that the Bills were going to do when the Ravens are running the way that they were last night. The run game efficiency, those are the stats that told the story, in my opinion. 34 rushing attempts to just 18 passing attempts. That's what this team wants to do. They want to run it down your face. That's what they want to do here. Most rushing attempts in the league this week at 34, yet also the highest yards per carry average. So normally it's one or the other, right? Normally it's okay, we're really emphasizing the ground and pound here. We're going to have a lot of different carries, but as you know, the explosives, especially in the run game, they're often few and far between. So the average yards per carry average is normally lower when you are running the ball as much. But last night, the Ravens got the volume and they got the explosiveness, leading in both of those categories in attempts and yards per carry. Ravens pass blocking grade, 92.7 as a team. I wanted to shout that out as well because when you are running the ball as well as the Ravens were, and this goes into sort of what I said at the beginning, it was the worst script possible for the Bills because when the Ravens, very first play of the game, it was Derrick Henry, boom, taking off, long touchdown run. Now all of a sudden you got to be on your heels. Now all of a sudden you've got to think, I have to defend the run first, right? Not only are they up on the scoreboard, not only is it their identity, we have to make sure that we don't get gashed like that again. Well, they often say that what's the best way to sometimes mitigate pressure on your offensive line? Well, it's running the football. And it's not running the football just because. It's because of the philosophy. It's the back and forth. It's the fact that if you are running the football really well, the other team's defensive line cannot just pin their ears back and tee off on you and get after the quarterback. That's why we see a great complementary football effort from the Ravens, where their pass blocking grade is also incredibly high because they established the run the way that they wanted to. Only one pressure allowed last night from the Ravens offensive line when they were in pass blocking. But to me, like you said, that was the stat that told the story last night.
You're absolutely right. My most impressive guy, I'll get back to my stat that tells the story, but it has to be Derrick Henry, right? I mean, just the breakout game for him as a Raven, 24 carries, 199 yards, 2 total touchdowns, 5 missed tackles, 6 explosive runs like you just mentioned. And I think that's really, this is where this team wants to live, right? They want to run it, maybe not 2-to-1 run to pass every week, but the balance is where they're going to live, right? You really only have one legitimate proven wide receiver in Zay Flowers. You've got 2 good tight ends, but they want to get downhill. They've been the best rushing team in the league since Lamar Jackson was drafted. They're continuing that this is why they got Derrick Henry, to look like this,
yep.
Right? And this is the best version of them, right? And I like that you mentioned the explosives too, because now I'll backtrack to my stat that tells a story other than everything you just said about the run game, because that was the story, and that's going to be the story for the Ravens every week. You want to take a team. Bill Belichick always talked about taking another team's best asset away from them, right? And for the Ravens, it's the run game, and the Bills didn't do that. Well, they did take it away from the Bills on defense. And what the Bills want to do, the one way that they could have got back into the game is to create explosive plays for themselves, right? They have Josh Allen, got a bunch of guys that can make plays. You've got a good run game. You can do all these things. They just didn't allow the Bills to do that. In the first half, the Bills did not have a single play that went for 10 or more yards. Not after the catch, not before the catch, not a single play that went for 10 or more yards. From what I could find, that was in the first half. They had a few in the second half, like you mentioned. That was the first time the Bills have gone an entire first half in PFF history without a play that went 10 or more yards. And we've been doing this since 2006. 31 plays, a 53.4 offensive grade in the first half, and not a single play that went 10 yards. They mixed coverage as well. They matched the personnel well. When the Bills went multiple tight ends, you saw the Ravens adjust and get down and single high and load 8 in the box, because it's going to be either A, running the ball right down your throat, or B, like play action with like a one-man route. That's kind of it's very simple when you have 2 and 3 tight ends on the field, or the Bills, sometimes Joe Brady likes to use a 6 offensive linemen. The Ravens did a great job matching personnel. When they got spread out, they went fine. Too high, we'll spread out with you. We're just not letting you get anything over the top. And look, it works not just for Josh Allen, but a lot of times with any elite quarterback. Make the other guys beat you. That they didn't let Josh Allen beat them. And it's not that Josh Allen had a million turnovers or anything like that in this game, but Josh Allen throwing 5-yard curls is a win for the defense.
Right.
You don't want the arm killing you. You don't want to spread out. When they spread out and get 4 or 5 wide on you, you don't want to go in man coverage, because then he'll start running. So They just did a great job matching personnel, mixing coverages, knowing what they wanted to do. And even though it was like a conservative game from Josh Allen and it wasn't the high turnover game that people assume is coming when Josh Allen has a bad game, he didn't have a bad game. It's just that the Ravens took away his ability to take over the game. Yeah. And you saw it in the first half. I mean, to not have a single play go for 10 yards in an entire half of football, especially when Josh Allen's the quarterback, is incredible. So the defense did have just as big a hand in this blowout, especially early, as the offense did.
Yeah, and I just think, again, going back to what we were talking about at the very top, what I brought up, the script was perfect for this to be a terrible Buffalo Bills game, right? And even when you look at the overall offensive emphasis of what the Ravens wanted to do, it just could not have started out any worse for the Bills, because not only are they going through injuries, which was, that's my most disappointing, is the guys who were having to fill in because of injuries, they just didn't play well last night. And it's hard to be too hard on them, but you're just a little disappointed because you wanted those guys to play a little bit better. There's a reason why they're not starters right now. I understand, Cam Lewis, Bale Inspector, which, by the way, that's like a Game of Thrones name if I've ever heard one. It's just, those guys just struggled last night. Dorian Williams struggled a little bit with Bernard and Matt Milano out, and so it was just hard for those guys who were really filling in, especially because we praise the Buffalo Bills for what they were able to do to the Miami Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars over the last 2 weeks, playing deeper coverages, making you throw the ball sort of underneath. Well, that's exactly what the Ravens wanted to do. They want to be a team that runs the ball, which they were able to do right off the bat. But then when it came to how do you attack these two high coverages, they're very comfortable throwing the ball underneath. Lamar Jackson, of the 4 games the Ravens have played, these last 2 games, the games in which they have looked the best, the win against the Cowboys and then the win last night, they've been Lamar Jackson's lowest average depth of target. Now, I'm not saying that Lamar can't throw, but I am saying that what the Bills dare you to do isn't really daring for what this Lamar Jackson offense wants to do. They want to run the ball. They want to be dual threat in the backfield, shoot multi-threat in the backfield, not just even with 2 guys who could be rushers, but they get wide receivers involved, the fullback involved as well. And they're very comfortable giving the ball to their wide receivers in space and saying, go get yards after the catch, go make plays. So, unfortunately, what the Bills are, philosophically, as a defense, the injuries that they had, and then the beginning of the game script all went very hard against them, where if you play this game 10 times, this is probably the worst result for the Bills that you will get in those 10 games. It just happened to play out like that last night. So I said the Bills were one of my disappointing, one of my most impressive. Before we get to your disappointing, then we move on. Nate Wiggins.
Love him.
Really impressed by what Nate Wiggins is doing so far early on in the season. 88.2 coverage grade last night. Only 1 reception allowed for 5 yards. Had 2 dropped interceptions. One was more difficult than the other, but he also had 2 forced incompletions. One of them was the dropped interception, but the other one was a really good play in the end zone. So Wiggins, there was a lot of talk of, is he too skinny to play in the NFL? Is he going to get pushed around? One thing's for sure, he's one hell of an athlete. He's making sure that he's getting in front of the football. So hats off to Nate Wiggins as well. But last one, because you said most impressive was Derrick Henry.
Yep.
Most disappointing.
Actually, a healthy guy in the Bills' front 7 to me that has to start playing better is Ed Oliver. 50.8 overall grade last night. Just 1 cleanup pressure and 16 opportunities. And so far this year, a 49.3 run defense grade that I believe is outside the top 50 of defensive tackles right now. They're hurt at linebacker. They're pretty good off the edge, obviously, with Rousseau. Von Miller playing a part-time role. Epinesa is pretty good, but they really need Ed Oliver to be a more dominant interior presence for them, and he wasn't that last night.
All right, so let's move on to the afternoon games that we had on Sunday. First one, I want to go to New Orleans Saints and the Atlanta Falcons here. The Falcons squeak out a win, 26-24. Anytime these divisional teams face off, it's going to be tight. They know each other so well. But let's talk about Atlanta's top 5 graded players since they won, so they get the honors here at the top. Defensive tackle David Onyemata at the very top of this list with an 88.4. Love to see that number. Normally we have a snap cutoff here where we say, okay, it's got to be a minimum of at least 25 snaps. Tyler Algier, I think he played like 22 or 23 snaps. I didn't care. I was putting the names in for this one. I wasn't keeping him off the list. That's my guy. He played very well yesterday. Outsnapped Bijan Robinson in a lot of ways. So he had an 86.4 PFF grade yesterday. I think how efficient he was a big reason why they were able to play as well as they were to get the victory. Linebacker Troy Anderson with the 82.6. Number 4 cornerback Mike Hughes an 80.1. And then number 5, the other running back Bijan Robinson with a 75.5. Kirk Cousins with a 70.0 overall grade in this one. Flipping over to New Orleans side of things, their wide receiver Chris Olave at the top of the list. Their highest graded player with an 86.2. Edge rusher Carl Granderson with an 81.2 right after that. Cornerback Marshawn Lattimore back from injury, 79.6. In this one, running back Alvin Kamara with a 78.6, and then edge rusher Chase Young, 71.7. Derek Carr, an 85.0 would have been in this list. But like we said, we separate the quarterbacks to make sure that we can highlight them no matter what. What was the stat that told the story? Am I going here first on this one?
I could go first.
Okay,
here. That's fine. The first one just seemed too obvious.
Okay.
But no, so it's funny
sure.
It's funny that Derek Carr with an 85 grade there, he did have a very good game, and he really adjusted better to coverages, I think, than last week. But I still think if you're trying to keep yourself in a game against the Saints, like the Falcons did here or like the Eagles did last week, you take away the deep ball and you take away, or you just hope the Saints don't call a whole lot of play action. And they've kind of gotten away from those two things in the last 2 weeks. Look, first 2 weeks of the season, Carr hit 3 deep balls for 168 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was 14-20 on play action. Yesterday, only threw 2 deep balls. Falcons were sitting back, making him throw it in front of them, and he was 0 for 2 on those 2 deep balls, and only 5 play action passes all day, and he went 3 for 5 on those. The impact of those 2 things is why the Saints look a lot different on offense right now. And yes, you make Derek Carr work for it. And yesterday he did play well. He gave him the lead with, a minute to go. It's not that he didn't play well, but it's a lot less explosive right now for the Saints on offense. Those were the 2 things that were their hallmark in the first 2 weeks, and now in the last 2 weeks they've kind of been taken away. Over the last 2 weeks, 2 for 7 on deep balls with 56 yards and an interception, right? So you're not letting Rashid Shaheed get over the top. You're not letting Chris Olave get over the top. Now, Olave had a fantastic game yesterday, and he's great in the intermediate game, but teams are now they've adjusted. They're making the Saints work for it. And they ran the ball pretty well. They got back to running the ball a little bit better than they did last week. Atlanta didn't go with the big 5- and 6-man fronts that Philadelphia did last week. But it's the part where it's like, okay, if you keep the Saints in front of you like Atlanta did here or like Philly did last week, you're at least in it. You're at least in the game. It's going to be closer to the Vest game, and you're making the Saints and you're making Derek Carr kind of throw in this bubble, right? It's the same thing we keep talking about with these deeper shell coverages where it's like, okay, make these quarterbacks beat you 8, 10, 12 yards at a time. Did Carr do it yesterday? Yeah, they didn't lose this game because of Derek Carr. Absolutely not. Not even the pick six obviously was on him with the tip ball and funny bounce that got to Troy Anderson and all of that. But this is how, if you're going to beat the Saints, this is how you beat them. You just have to keep them in front of you. So Carr did have a nice day, but the explosiveness is not there in their passing game right now.
Yeah, look, I do agree with you, everything you said with Derek Carr, needing that part of their offense to really rev up, and it was missing from this part of their game. The stat that told the story for me, it was the Rashid Shaheed fumble, where and that's the muffed punt fumble where, it bounces off of his chest and his hand and it goes into the end zone, and normally you can't advance a fumble, but it goes into the end zone and Hodge jumps on it and Atlanta gets a touchdown there. This game was a 2-point game, and when I was sort of going through the statistics that we have here and the data points, I was like, okay, there are, I guess, a couple of different things I could point out, but it is funny how close this game was, and it seems like a coaching cliche to be like, turnover. Yeah, you lost a turnover. It was a big turnover. That turnover, in my opinion, made the entire difference in the ballgame, because when you look at the Atlanta Falcons, who won this game, they were worse on third down. They were worse in the red zone. They had more penalties. They had less time of possession, and they had less total yards. What did the Falcons do better than the Saints in this game? Basically just jumped on a phone. And I'm not trying to say that to take anything away from the Falcons.
And the pick six they had was, all by admission, incredibly lucky. But it really was.
But this was one of those games where you sort of look back on it. And again, I don't say this to take anything away from the Falcons in this game, but you look at it and you go, hey, sometimes better be lucky than good, if you will. And in this game, we were a little bit more lucky than the division opponent. And when you play these teams really tight, these two rosters who know each other very, very well. I know coaching staffs are a little new, so I didn't want to say that. But rosters and players and tendencies and things like that. Certainly a lot of the Saints have been around in the same building for a long time with that coaching staff. Sometimes it really just is that. The ball's got to bounce your way 1 or 2 times, and it did for the Falcons, and that's why they won this game. So I wish I had more of a enlightening stat, but when I looked throughout all of the major categories, I was like, all right, where do I start here? Penalties, time of possession, key moments, third down, red zone, total yards, what was it? The Falcons were worse than the Saints in every single one of those categories.
Yeah.
And yet, they won the football game. So my most impressive in this one, speaking of how well I feel like New Orleans played, Chris Olave is a superstar, man. He is a superstar wide receiver. When they need a big catch, they go to Chris Olave. And I feel like the defense knows the ball is going to Chris Olave, and it does not matter. He caught 8 of 10 targets in this game for 87 yards. It's not like, he broke a career high in receiving yards or anything like that. But 3 out of 3 when it came to targets and catches on third down, all 3 going for first downs, especially as the game was kind of coming into its closing, most important and impactful moments, they went to Chris Olave. And as I watched that game, especially down the stretch, that was such a big takeaway of who was really impressive for me. There were a lot of impressive performances, but I think long term, this is the guy that's worth shouting out. Not that we don't talk about Chris Olave before, but he is that good. I don't think Chris Olave gets talked about enough with some of those very top tier receivers. And to be honest with you, what he can be in this Saints Clint Kubiak offense is up there with some of those top guys. I don't know if he's ever going to have the stat volume, but the impact of a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase or a Devontae Adams or something like that, they lean on Chris Olave like he is one of these players. And he's come up in so many big moments. I thought yesterday was a lot more of them.
Absolutely. He is no less than at the very worst, a top 15 receiver. Absolutely.
For sure.
Probably 12, possibly 10. I mean, he's that good. I mean, he can do it at all levels of the field. And for this team, he does it really at that intermediate level. For the answer that they needed over the last 2 weeks against these softer shell coverages and things like that, when Rashid Shaheed was the star of the first 2 games, now you answer that, you take away the deep ball, you get Olave working everywhere underneath in that 20-yard box, and he's uncoverable in that range. In that intermediate range, if Derek Carr has time, good luck covering Chris Olave for 3.5 seconds. Absolutely. You mentioned it. There wasn't a whole lot. Olave was great. Carr was good. There wasn't a whole lot to be impressed by in this game. So let me just shout out the third phase with my most impressive. I'll go with Younghoe Koo,
nice.
Falcons kicker.
Love it.
The Falcons did not score an offensive touchdown in this game. Kicked 4 field goals. Koo hit all of them from 40 and beyond. The game winner from 58. I mean, just such an impressive kick. I believe a career long for him from 58.
I think it was, yeah.
Currently the second highest graded kicker in the league behind Brandon Aubrey. And as an added bonus, took over the kickoff duty from Bradley Pinion this week. Younghoe Koo, look, he's the reason they won the game at the end of it, right? I mean, he's got 12 points, scored 12 more points than their offense did when you think about it. So, I mean, it's kind of indicative of how this game went that I had to pick Atlanta's kicker as my most impressive player.
I picked Dallas's kicker last week, so, it's a kicker league, as I've often said. Who's your most disappointing before we move on?
And he had a guy for the Saints who had some good moments, but then had some really bad ones too. He had Paulson Adebo out there at corner. Okay. Look, he had an interception, made a really nice play in an interception, forced 3 incompletions, but also gave up 7 catches for 120 yards, and most importantly, a pretty obvious defensive pass interference call that set up that 58-yard field goal and got the Falcons into field goal range. So tough day for him. It was a competitive day. He did have some good moments, but at the end of it, made the big error at the end that gave the Falcons the winning field goal.
My most disappointing hurts my Florida Gator heart, but Kyle Pitts. I mean, we're now looking at, okay, how many years, how many regimes, how many different game scripts do we need to just tell us I don't know if he's just ever going to be the guy in Atlanta. It really feels like there's too much evidence to the contrary for that. 3 targets, 0 catches in this game, and now he is at a career low of a 14.9% threat percentage, which if you watched the show before, you know that's how often you are being targeted for the routes that you are running. He's just not a major part of this offense. And I think a lot of people would look at this and say, all right, maybe you run the passing offense through Drake London, even people who like Darnell Mooney out there, what Kyle Pitts was supposed to be, what he was drafted to be, he should have at least been wide receiver 2 on this team or target option number 2. And he's just not. And now we're getting too many years, too many games under our belt where he is going down in volume. He's going down in target share, and that's just disappointing for somebody who is one of the most talented tight ends that I've seen in college football. Next game I want to talk about, this one was wild. Minnesota Vikings, Green Bay Packers. It's always wild when the Packers and the Vikings face off, but it was like a runaway for the Vikings. And then all of a sudden, Green Bay was just storming back. Obviously, you got Jordan Love's injury, which we'll certainly talk about in this one. But ultimately, Minnesota does come away with a huge win in Green Bay, 31-29. Let's talk about Minnesota's top 5 graded players in this game. Linebacker Cam Gruder-Hill is at the top of the list with an 83 82.8. Justin Jefferson right behind him with an 82.7. Offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw with an 81.1. Wide receiver Jordan Addison next with a 76.8, and then cornerback Byron Murphy Jr. with a 74.1. Sam Darnold in this one, this might shock some people just because of the touchdowns that he had, but 45.5 overall grade in this one. It was not his best performance. On the other side of things for Green Bay, this signing just keeps getting better and better, Dalton. Safety Xavier McKinney, 91.0, another interception here in this game. Offensive tackle Zach Tom with an 89.0 is next on the list. Wide receiver Jaden Reed, 75.7, their most consistent receiver to date. The other offensive tackle, Rasheed Walker, also on this list at a 74.0, and then running back Emmanuel Wilson with a 71.5. Jordan Love, roller coaster of a day, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but ends up with a 68.8 PFF grade because of so many big-time throws and also so many turnover-worthy plays, it felt like. Dalton, what was the stat that told the story here in this game?
Look, and I know it was a wild game, and it eventually became a close game and the wild ending, and you know, the Packers trying to claw their way back. But that last part's really the theme for me, is the Packers trying to claw their way back from a big deficit, right? And you look at the stats for me lay in the first 3 drives for each team. Okay, the Vikings scored 3 touchdowns. They had a 78.5 offensive grade. Sam Darnold struggled the rest of the day, kind of putting the ball in danger a little bit, but hit 9 of his first 10 passes for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. 9 different players had a carry or a reception on their first 3 drives. And you contrast that with what the Packers did on their first 3 drives. Jordan Love had an interception. They missed 2 field goals, got into field goal range and missed 2 of them, 53.2 offensive grade. And you thought maybe even with Jordan Love back in there that, okay, the last 2 weeks with Malik Willis, they established the run game. Didn't happen this week. Those first 3 drives, they had 8 carries for 26 yards. So just nothing was working for the Packers early. Everything was working for the Vikings early. And as the game went on, that did kind of flip, and Jordan Love got the Packers back into the game. But to me, this was just about the start the Vikings got off to, and the Packers trying to claw their way back, and they just couldn't get all the way there.
And I think this is also a hat tip, to Kevin O'Connell, right? And just the offensive mind that he is. We often talk about the first drive of the game, or the first drive of each half, as the scripted drives, right? Okay, this is the one they rehearse. They go through this in practice. These are the plays we're going to run, as long as these are the defenses that we believe we're going to see. We end up seeing those. And to your point, they felt like they had the confidence of scripted drives for multiple drives. The first 3 drives, that's what it felt like. That's how they were operating. And then, once you build such a lead on a team, you kind of throw game plans out of the window, and it gets a little hairy for both teams after that. It makes sense why Green Bay was able to kind of punch back, because you don't know how the game's going. When you go up that early, obviously every team wants to go up early, but that sort of all right, you got to pass the sticks, you're down 21-0 that quickly in a game. It's almost like both teams have this feeling of, I shouldn't say both teams, because, obviously a team like Green Bay, they're professionals. They're not going to give up. They made it close to the very end. But like fans, for example, they're like, all right, well, we just get into next week? Like, what are we doing here? But you still got 3 quarters of football to play. And so I think that's, again, a sign of good coaching with Matt LaFleur, that his guys did not give up there. And I even think that they still left some meat on the bone, and they could have even won this football game. I mean, I'll sort of transition that into my stat that told the story. It was the Jordan Love roller coaster. He was coming back from the MCL sprain. You figured he wasn't going to look 100%. He really didn't to start that game. Like, he was really starting to just acclimate to what that regular season speed was going to be like again, with him coming off of that injury. And, just the power that you generate from the lower half is always very important into where the ball goes, how quickly it gets there. The RPMs, if you will, how fast you're spinning the ball. Is it on a frozen rope, or are you putting too much air underneath it? Love was going through the ups and downs. We were on the roller coaster for that entire game. And when you look at it, this was not in the game plan. No matter what you think of Jordan Love, this could not have been in the game plan. 58 dropbacks and 54 passing attempts. That was the most of any quarterback in week 4 so far. Obviously, we got 2 Monday night games, but it's a lot to put on a guy's plate who's coming back from injury. He had 4 touchdown throws. One of them is a big-time throw. But then there you go. The 3 turnover-worthy plays. I also thought this was very interesting, the stat at the bottom of the screen. 60.9% air yards, which is 8th most in the NFL. So not only were they having this guy drop back and pass, it's not like they were saying, hey, we're going to get some easy things open for you. You're going to hit Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Dontavius Wicks. We're going to hit these guys underneath. He's slinging it. He's looking deep. And again, you're down on the scoreboard, so I understand you think you got to push the ball. But it was that up and down that was the big difference for me. And even, dude, one of those interceptions, I can't remember which one this was thrown to, but it was the one that it was at the front right corner of the end zone. There was 6 minutes to go in the ball game, and he threw up like a Hail Mary throw. Like there was 1 second to go in the game. Like, I just got to throw this in the end zone. Buddy, no, you don't. And if that wouldn't have been intercepted, I wonder what that drive turns into. And you lose this game by 2 points. You could have kind of like lived. I cannot remember what down it was. It might have been third down, but I felt like you were in a situation where it could have been different for him, and he just threw up a prayer in the end zone. And I did not feel like he needed to have that desperation. Maybe even you get into field goal range in that drive, and it's different for you. So Love will calm down. I think both of these teams are fine. To me, it's much more of a hat tip to just the unbelievable job that the Vikings are doing here to start this season at 4-0, picking up a huge road win. But that was the stat that told the story for me. Most impressive for you.
I got to love. Part of the reason everyone talks about the weapons and all the stuff that Sam Darnold has at his disposal, but I have to give credit to the Vikings' pass protection too. An 83.6 team pass blocking grade. Their offensive line only gave up 7 pressures. Darnold was only touched once all day for a sack. Wasn't another knockdown, not another sack, just 1 sack. This Vikings offensive line, it deserves just as much credit for their success as the weapons and Darnold and O'Connell and everybody. A lot of this wouldn't be possible without a clean pocket. Darnold's operating from mostly clean pockets, and you're seeing guys, especially Christian Darrisaw. We saw him on that top 5 right there. Such a great player at left tackle. I mean, and it just sets everyone else up for success on that line. They deserve as much credit in the trenches as the skill guys do in Minnesota.
I agree with you 100%, and I will shout them out every single time that we can. Most impressive for me, I'm going to go Jayden Reed. I'm just so impressed. It feels like every single week with Jayden Reed and what he is doing. Caught 7 of 8 targets in this game, 139 yards and a touchdown, 44 yards after catch, and he just looks different. He looks different when he is running routes, when he has the ball in his hand. He is operating at a speed that even the other wide receivers on Green Bay, which we talked about a lot going into the season, it was like, oh man, who's going to be wide receiver 1 on this team? Very clearly, to me, it's Jayden Reed. He is the guy that you want to have as your target number 1 in this passing attack. Sure, you like the diversity, you want to spread it out, but this is the guy that you go through when you need a big catch, when you need somebody to build a passing attack around every single week. I think Jayden Reed's name needs to be at the top or very close to the top when you're talking about how the Packers have a lot of success. And I'll just go right into my most disappointing because it's sort of on top of that. I'm bummed about how Dontavian Wicks has started this season. And I know it looks like Christian Watson's going to miss some time, but and so Wicks is probably going to get even more looks, but he's gotten plenty of looks. And even watching yesterday, I don't understand. He's not catching the football. Even the touchdown catch that he had, I don't know if you caught, he triple bobbled it. It's like, dude, he's got to be more confident than that. And I had a lot of confidence in him going into the season when we did the preview show, for the whole season. He was my breakout candidate for the Packers. I was really excited to see what he was able to do because of how consistent of a deep threat that he was last year. But this season, Dontavian Wicks, this is just yesterday, only caught 5 of his 13 targets that he had yesterday. He had 2 drops, and just 50% of his catchable passes were caught yesterday. Normally, for a catchable passes caught percentage, you want to be somewhere in at least the 80s. But ideally, low 90s. They're classified as catchable passes for a reason. You want to be able to haul as many of those in as possible. He has a 57.1% catchable passes caught percentage this season. So it wasn't just yesterday where it was like, just bad day at the office, 50% of them he hauled in. He's been struggling all year. So he is somebody who I think really needs to step up for this Green Bay team as they look to put their best foot forward moving forward.
Absolutely. Look, and you wonder if there's certain guys and there's still such a young team where you go, okay, are there guys, is he one of these guys, is he pressing, right? You have young guys with big expectations, maybe division title expectations, maybe Super Bowl aspirations, right? And you go, the drops and things like that, usually drops happen a lot of times when you're too tense, right? You're trying too hard to catch the football and your hands tighten up and all of that stuff. So, maybe it's in all likelihood just a mental thing because we saw so many good flashes from him last year. But no, I mean, it's one of those things where it's good for them to have that depth of weapons, but you still need those guys to produce, right? And you mentioned Watson getting hurt now. You need a guy like Wicks to step up. You need Reed, obviously, who's playing great. You need Romeo Doubs. You need all those guys because it's been the thing all offseason that was talked about. Well, who's the number 1 guy? Well, Matt LaFleur always answered with, I don't care who the number 1 guy is. They're all playing, right? Things of that nature. So, yeah, they need Wicks to step up for sure. Some other guys they needed to step up in this game. A big story in the pregame was Jair Alexander being inactive for this game. Mm-hmm. It became a problem really quick. And Packers cornerbacks without Alexander combined for a 36.9 coverage grade, 12 catches allowed, 207 yards and 2 touchdowns. You had Eric Stokes struggling on the outside. Look, the Vikings are hard enough to cover with Jair Alexander and all of their weapons in their scheme. You don't have one of the elite corners in football. It's a problem. You had Keyshawn Nixon jumping inside and outside all game, kind of like, say, somebody like a Trent McDuffie would, and Nixon's very much more comfortable in the slot. Tough day for Packers corners for sure, especially obviously early on. But without Alexander, those guys on the outside didn't stand a whole lot of chance.
Steelers at Colts. Indianapolis comes away with the win despite a late game push from Justin Fields and the Pittsburgh Steelers, 27-24. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players from the Indianapolis Colts, starting with the 2 wide receivers at the very top. Josh Downs gets the crown here with a 90.5 grade this past week. His running mate, Michael Pittman Jr., right behind him at an 88.2. Defensive tackle Grover Stewart with an 84.4 at number 3. Jalen Carlisle with an 82.3. Cornerback Samuel Womack III with a 77.4. Big game from him. I'll get into that a little bit more later. Joe Flacco coming in off of the bench to relieve a injured Anthony Richardson, 55.8. And then when you flip the page to the Pittsburgh Steelers, safety Deshaun Elliott, the top graded player with an 86.2. Defensive tackle Cam Hayward with an 80.5. Edge rusher TJ Watt, 75.8. Offensive tackle Dan Moore Jr. with a 75.7, and then center Zach Frazier with a 74.7. Quarterback Justin Fields with a 67.0 in this game. Dalton, Stout told the story. What do we got?
So I got a weird one for you. I was watching this game, and it felt like there were times when the Colts offensive line was dominant, like they usually are, right? Mm-hmm. And there was other times where it was like, the Steelers are winning the battle here. And it's a battle of great units, right? The Colts might have the best offensive line in football. The Steelers might have the best D-line in football. It's just it's a primetime matchup.
Going into the week, right? That's what it was. When we previewed it on Thursday, this was the number 1 offensive line versus the number 1 defensive line for PFF grades.
Yeah, and the interesting part is there was a lot of this game where the Colts O-line was winning. They were getting movement early in the run game. They got out to the good start, whether it was Richardson or Flacco, right? They started the game off right. But something I think Mike Tomlin and the Steelers defensive staff is going to go back and look at is they're going to go, man, we should have sent heat. We should have sent pressure more often, right? And I'm going to split this up into a standard rush 4 or less and a blitz look 5 or more, okay? When the Steelers, 20 times that they sent a standard rush 4 or less pass rushers, they only got 3 pressures, and the Colts pass pro grade was 68.2, all right? When the Steelers blitzed them 11 times, they got 9 pressures on those 11 snaps, and the Colts pass pro grade was a 21.2. They basically just could not block the blitz, whether it was Richardson or Flacco or whoever back there. The Steelers, there was just too many times where, yes, they have a great front 4. I mean, they can send as good a front 4 as anybody. But the Colts could block those 4 guys. They were able to do it. Whether it was in the run game or especially in pass protection, when they were blitzing, Indy stood no chance at all. And I think if they would have just turned up the gas just a little bit more as the game went on, because Joe Flacco's not moving. Obviously Richardson can run if he's in there, but he got hurt. Flacco's not going anywhere, right? And he would have to make a second-and-a-half decision if you're getting through. It just felt like the Steelers, and it would have been a huge comeback, right?
Yeah.
The window was there. It was there, but they needed to just turn the heat up a little bit more on defense for me. Like, if they would have just said, you know what, screw it. Like, sometimes they used to do it in the old Dick LeBeau days too sometimes, right? When it's like, screw it, you know what, we got him. Just blitz him every play. And they just didn't do it. And Flacco was able, he just got enough clean pockets against a standard rush where he could make just enough plays to hold them off. And then the Colts again, they got good movement in the run game. I'd say in the run game was a pretty even battle overall. The Colts had their moments, the Steelers had theirs. But that was something to me that I looked at. I was like, man, they're just not getting there with 4. Like, in the times when they blitzed, they got there almost every time. I'm like, if they would have just turned the gas on a little bit more, they had it. And again, they're not a team that wants to play from behind with the style that they play, and really George Pickens being their only receiving threat on the outside at least, and all of that. But it just, I could feel it. I was like, man, why don't they blitz more?
Did they start to blitz more during the second half of the game? I don't even know if it was more first half or second half.
I don't remember the timing of it, but I just know coming out of it, I was like, every time they did it, it worked. And they just should have. Had they turned the gas on more in the second half while they were coming back, and they were starting to get stops, but the Colts were still moving the ball. Once the times when they were blitzing them, Colts, they stood no chance.
Yeah. I only ask because, sometimes defensive coordinators are trying to think of a million things, so I'm not trying to make it sound like, they don't know what they're doing. Sometimes you just miss, the forest for the trees, if you will. And I think that, that's a big picture thing. I'm actually talking small picture. So some other analogy, you're missing the trees for the forest. I don't think that makes sense. But when you talk about blitzing a quarterback, sometimes I feel as though you almost want to start every game like that to be like, hey, if you can't handle it, we're going to keep sending it straight at you. And sometimes it is as simple as that, where maybe if the Steelers were doing that a little bit more at the beginning, I'm not sure whether they were or not. That's something I got to look up after the show, but that could have been something where it's like, man, okay, we realized the blitz was working later in the game.
It was an even, at least on pass plays, an even amount in both halves.
Then it was something that you just wish was
7 in the first half and 7 in the second half, and I wish they had seen that going into halftime, that's the part that was working, and gone, okay, let's keep on it. And as the game went on, and I think maybe they found it a little, but 7 in each half on pass plays. So it really just didn't change a whole lot. But I think going back and looking at it, that's the part where, and I know, look, they have a great front four, and they were struggling to cover in this game. But there's sometimes where you go, okay, if we're struggling to cover even, let's turn the heat up. Let's not give them 3, 4, 5 seconds to work with on the back end. So it's just an adjustment thing that I think could have been made. In reality, the Steelers fell behind in this game, and they don't want to play from behind. They want to play defense. They want to run the ball.
Of course.
It's the Iowa Hawkeyes thing. It's that thing where it's like we have to play within this space, and we can't fall behind by 2 scores. But an increased usage there would have got them back into it. I really believe so.
Stat that told the story for me is simply having Joe Flacco on the roster, right? Because we said when we showed the grades, he didn't play great, but 16 for 26 in this game, 168 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. It was not a vintage Joe Flacco performance, but it was enough. This is why you have a veteran on your roster. So if Anthony Richardson goes out, which unfortunately he has been injured throughout his NFL career quite a bit already, you are okay putting this guy in the game, especially when you have a lead, right? That's the thing that really stood out to me is Flacco was able to maintain the lead. And was Pittsburgh kind of storming back there at the end of the game? Sure they were. But when the clock hit 0, who was still in front? It was still Indy. And I think that's because you have a veteran on your team, and I think that's the stat that told the story. Whatever Joe Flacco's contract is, I should have looked up those numbers. Those should have been the stat that told the story. Whatever that was, it was worth it for you because you got this win here. My most impressive in this game, though, I'm going to go to their secondary. I said I highlighted Jalen Jones getting 2 interceptions last week after I sort of called him out on Twitter for wearing number 40. Fellow cornerback, Samuel Womack III, getting his first start this past week. 56 defensive snaps in this one. That was the most in a single game of his career so far. 77.4 coverage grade, 65.9 run defense grade. He allowed just 1 catch for 12 yards with 3 targets. Also had 2 forced incompletions. One of them was a pretty big one in this game. And so Samuel Womack, wanted to give him sort of a salute and say, hey, most impressive for him, really being able to step in. I thought that was a impressive performance from him.
Does he wear a good enough number for you?
He wears 33, which is better.
Okay.
I think it's better.
You're a 20s guy, aren't
I don't
you?
love it still, but 33 is kind of like it's like a safety number to me. If you're going to be in the secondary and you got a number in the 30s, it's kind of like a safety number.
They just got to be wearing something between like 22 and 28 for you?
Any single digit number, good with. Anything of 20 to 29, and then I would say like 31, 32. That's kind of where I draw the line there. 41, oddly enough.
41's worked.
Good number.
It's worked in the past. I remember the one I can remember. I think is it Terrence Newman wore 41?
Terrence Newman did wear 41. Didn't Antoine Bethea wear 41, right, as well?
He was a safety, though.
Okay, because Roman Harper was, too. Roman Harper also wore 41, I believe. But safeties.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Terrence Newman's the one I remember with 41, for sure.
That one checks out.
Great player. Great player he was.
Good ball player. Who's your most impressive?
You know what? I think this Colts offense operates a lot better. I've been talking for several weeks about, look, just get first downs. Okay, we don't have to hit all these home runs, and obviously Joe Flacco understands that. He's been around long enough, but I think a guy like Josh Downs really, really helps their offense, and I think it made a huge difference. It was his second game of the year. Didn't quite get it going last week. This week he got it going. 8 catches, 82 yards, a touchdown, and 5 other first downs. If his name isn't already Josh First Downs, it needs to be. I think that's something. We either need to trademark, or if they already have it, cool. But no, just that he's the guy that moves the chains. And actually, Flacco even talked about that after the game. He was like, Josh Downs really got a lot of big first downs for us. And that's just, to me, Pittman obviously moves the chains too. Michael Pittman had a fantastic game. But I think having a guy like Downs in the slot who can just route up guys one-on-one in that area, catch a 5-yard ball, take it after the catch across the chains, I just think it made a big difference. It felt like he was that guy they were missing the first 3 weeks, where it was like, Alec Pierce is a long ball guy. Michael Pittman can do a little bit of everything. But having Josh Downs as a guy who can move the chains and just keep this offense functioning 10 yards at a time is big, because I thought the first 3 weeks they were trying to hit way too many home runs. They just need to manufacture and let the home runs come to you, right? Just keep the chains moving. I thought he made a huge difference in this game.
No, and even the touchdown catch, he looks like he's got juice, right?
Yep.
The touchdown catch from him, Shane Steichen was in his bag because he motioned him before the snap, and then it was the whip route. So it's like, okay, I'm going one direction. Just kidding, I'm going the other. So now, the corner, the defensive back, whatever, you're forcing so much communication, but then you're also really stressed out because this is a very quick football player who has the opportunity to gain separation in really small situations. So not, game-wise, it was a big situation. He scored a touchdown. I'm saying small area, in a phone booth, if you will. So that is Josh Downs' bread and butter. It's an area that I loved his game when he was coming out of UNC. But I love the fact that not only was he short area quick, he was strong at the catch point too. So to me, I think that we're just seeing the beginning of what Josh Downs can blossom into. I think he is a legitimate option for this passing attack. Most disappointed, Steelers run blocking. I know it wasn't all bad, but 68.9 run blocking grade versus the Colts. 1.1 yards before contact per attempt for all of their running backs. I'm wondering, man, Najee Harris, the numbers just are not good for Najee Harris. I'm looking at him. He had 13 attempts, only 19 yards. Justin Fields is a different story. Cordero Patterson, I know it was a different story as well. But, the traditional run game, what they want to do out of their traditional run sets has just not been working. And it's those parts of the offensive line and of their offense that have to get better. Because you mentioned, this is not really a team that just wants to chuck it deep down the field or rely on a ton of explosives. They want to be steady in what they do. They want their defense to lead the way. That's the DNA of this team, and they're hoping that Justin Fields being in the lineup simply gives them the opportunity to infuse some of those explosive plays in there. But it's much more of a controlled script. That's what they want to do. And right now, their run blocking is not good enough to do that. 1.1 yards before contact as an average, that is just simply not good enough. It wasn't good enough in this game, and I think that's why you ultimately saw them not winning this game. They weren't allowed to play. They were not allowed to play their brand of football as much as they wanted to, even before the score got out of hand.
Yeah, I agree totally. I mean, the run game, and honestly, they need more help to me in the passing game too. I think for me, my most disappointing is Steelers' weapons. Mainly, I would say not named George Pickens, although he's not totally absolved of blame because of the fumble inside the 10-yard line. That was a drive that the Steelers were really moving and could have got back in the game. That was, I believe, in the second quarter it was. But look, I need another answer in the passing game. And Pat Freiermuth had 29 yards on one catch and then 28 the rest of the day. Najee Harris had a big play on a screen, but I need guys more consistently on the perimeter who can win, because right now, look, in this game, Van Jefferson had 2 catches for 21, and Calvin Austin had 1 for 17, and other than Pickens, that was it for their wide receivers. I don't know if it's, if he's healthy yet, if Roman Wilson's ready to play, or
they need Roman Wilson badly.
So bad, because you can feel it on too many plays, and I know some people, there goes Justin Fields holding the ball, but he's holding the ball because, honestly, it's just a lot of plays no one's open. And you're just seeing it. And I know, look, Pickens is really good, and he's obviously their top guy. And he had a day worthy of a number one receiver yesterday outside of the fumble, right? 7 catches, 113 yards. But they need something else on the outside, somebody else that can win, because you can just see way too often. You mentioned the run game. If they don't have the run game going, George Pickens isn't the type of guy that's going to get 300 yards for you. He's not, he's very good, but you don't think of him like Justin Jefferson or Julio Jones or somebody like that. Right. They need somebody, just somebody to step up, a number 2 receiver to me on this offense. The offensive line is young and developing, and obviously Fautanu's hurt, and they've been figuring out the tackle thing all year. But they just don't have a number 2 receiver, and it showed to me yesterday. There's just too many plays where we didn't get anybody separating.
Look, I love them, but Darnell Washington's a biscuit away from being a right tackle,
Yeah.
right? And he had more receiving yards in this game than Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin. That kind of tells you what you need to know. Look, all due respect to Darnell Washington, who was a top 20
Good
player.
player. He's playing well, but if you don't have threats on the outside, what are you? Honestly.
Right. And I think Roman Wilson really helps that team
big time
in this area. So I'm excited to see him whenever he is able to get healthy and back out onto the field. We got the Eagles and the Bucs that we're previewing next. But before we get to that, whether it's a TD, a tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6, whatever you want to call a touchdown, one thing is for sure, touchdowns matter at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. In the ground, they're on the ground, in the air, special teams, defense, whatever. We don't care how they score them. We just want to bet on touchdowns, right? DraftKings Sportsbook, it's the number one place to bet touchdowns. If you are ready to place your first bet, try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. We just had a conversation about, what Josh Downs can be in the league. When Roman Wilson gets back, if you think he's going to get into the lineup right away and you think this guy is good for 6, go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, make your bet today. New DraftKings customers bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. You score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet on touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY, or you just text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets do expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, visit dkng.co/FTBALL. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Large win down in Tampa, 33-16. They really take it to the Eagles. Man, speaking of teams that were able to put their foot on the gas immediately to start a game, that is what the Buccaneers were able to do, and the Eagles just were not able to claw their way back in this one. Take a look at the Bucs' top 5 graded players on the day. Future Hall of Famer linebacker Levante David at the very top for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at a 90.4. Cornerback Jamel Dean right behind him with an 86.1. Edge rusher Yaya Diaby. It says yay on there, but, it could just be a celebration for the day that he had. That's my bad, by the way, guys. I forgot the other A when I was typing that in. 77.9 overall grade in this one. Cornerback Tyke Smith was 75.7. And then cornerback Zion McCollum as well with a 75.1. 3 corners there in the top 5 for the Bucs. Look at that Todd Bowles cornerback room. Baker Mayfield would have been on that list. 86.9. If we weren't separating the quarterbacks there. And then when you go to the Philadelphia Eagles, offensive tackle Jordan Mailata with a 79.9, running back Saquon Barkley with a 76.8, edge rusher Josh Sweat with a 75.6, tight end Dallas Goedert with a 73.4, edge rusher Brandon Graham with a 71.4, and then quarterback Jalen Hurts, another tough day for Hurts. 51.3. Just feels like Todd Bowles has Jalen Hurts in this Eagles offense number over the last 3 seasons. What do you think the stat that told the story was here, Dalton?
So last week we talked about Philadelphia going down to New Orleans, getting that win, and I thought they had the best defensive game plan of the week. This week I'm not really sure what they were doing. It just seemed like they got back to basics and they were sitting in zone coverage, and I guess they were trying to mimic what Denver did to Tampa last week, but Denver also has a Patrick Surtain that can shadow Mike Evans, and it's kind of a different way that they operate it with Vance Joseph. But for me, the number is the Bucs had 190 yards after the catch. Okay, something I felt early in the game, and Mayfield was great, and he made several great throws throughout the game. But I thought early in this game, it felt like the Bucs just getting the ball to their playmakers and letting them work, and just kind of going underneath these zone coverages and attacking them with the ball in their hands, right? And that 190 yards after the catch, over the past 2 years, since the start of last year, what's the only game where they had more than that? Playoff game against Philadelphia when they had 210. Okay, and it just seems to be a theme on offense too, where it's like, okay, we know how to attack these guys. Just get them after the catch, and we'll figure it out. And the other one too, and again, I think this started early in this game. They had 136 yards after the catch in the first half. Very clear plan. Whoever it was, whether it was Godwin or the backs or Trey Palmer or whoever underneath, just get it to him and we'll just work in space, right? We don't want Jalen Carter against a relatively young a young offensive line inside for the Bucs. We still got our backup right tackle in. Let's just get the ball out and we'll play kind of 7-on-7. We'll get out there. But 136 yards after the catch in the first half. Looked that up. That's the second most that since 2006, since PFF started, the second most that the Bucs have had in a first half. And the first game was in 2007. So you're talking about it's been 17 years since this team had this many yards after catch in the first half. They just came out early and they established, okay, you're going to sit back in zone and we're not going to throw into the teeth of it. We're going to we got some really good athletes on this team. We're going to let them work in space, and we're just going to work down the field. And that's what worked. Obviously, Todd Bowles and his defense shut down the Eagles, too. They got off to as slow a start as you could get off to. But the Bucs came in with a clear plan. Then when the Eagles start coming up, then Mayfield starts making some vertical throws and doing some different things, and it was just a shred fest from there. But that's the part to me where it's like the Bucs, they got a great group of skill players. You got two good backs in there. Bucky Irving's coming along now big time. I think he had the same number of carries this week as Rachaad White. You've got guys who can make plays on the outside, and that's where the Bucs won this game, was out on the perimeter.
I agree with you, and I'll sort of expand that. I think the Bucs won this game, and they're winning this season on early downs. Because when you look at the last 3 years for this team, certainly if you take the clock back 2 years, Byron Leftwich was bad on first and second down. Like, they really could not figure it out. They had no rhythm. They were running the ball in disadvantageous situations. Like, they'd throw it on first down. They'd either it felt like for a while they were starting every drive, just running the football, because it feels like that's sort of what Todd Bowles has wanted. That's his identity. But then they really couldn't run the ball very well. So then they were behind the sticks and, getting like 2nd and 9 situations. And then it's just really not a good series there for you. Or they'd pass the ball, and if it was an incomplete pass, they'd go, we just passed it, so now we have to run. And then they'd run the football, and they'd get, 2-3 yards, and all of a sudden it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. Okay, well, what are you doing? You're putting your team behind the 8 ball before you even get to 3rd down. You're not even trying to get first downs at this point. You're just trying to get to manageable situations. They didn't really handle it well under Byron Leftwich's last year on those early down, those 1st and 2nd downs. And it felt like it was a journey last year as well with Dave Canales. There were times when the game plans were nice when it came to early down work, but there were too many head-scratching times. And you could say to yourself, well, Canales is still trying to figure it out. He was a first-time play caller. The team wasn't exactly what it needed to be, especially on the interior offensive line when it comes to running the football. They were not good in that area up front, so you want to give him a little bit of grace because, sure, you don't want to just completely abandon the run, but when you do run, the offensive line's not good enough. There were a lot of excuses there. The interior offensive line and the offensive line in general, I think, is better this year. The passing weapons are better in this year. But straight up, Liam Cohen is just better this year, their offensive coordinator. The Bucs have been very good on those early downs, especially yesterday. When you look at how they were playing against the Eagles, and I know people in the chat, they're talking about Vic Fangio and how the scheme is trash and they're bad, but I do want to give credit to Mayfield and Liam Cohen in this one. And the last stat that I'm going to mention sort of goes into, okay, well, it doesn't really matter who they were playing. They just knew their opponent very, very well. When you look at early down, so 1st and 2nd down, they had an 89.9 passing grade yesterday against the Eagles. 4th highest EPA per pass on early downs, but also the 4th highest EPA per play. So even when they weren't passing the football, this was a good team that knew what they were doing. 2 big-time throws and 0 turnover-worthy plays with an 85.3 adjusted completion percentage. I was watching something the other day. I cannot remember where I was watching it. Apologies for this. But somebody was talking about how Patrick Mahomes does not take negative plays on first down. He will not do it. He won't take negative plays on third down. And the early down work that Patrick Mahomes does to especially avoid negatives and get completions is a reason why the Chiefs feel like they're in so many confident and advantageous 2nd and 3rd down situations. When you look at an 85.3% adjusted completion percentage and 0 turnover-worthy plays for Baker Mayfield, that tells me that is what they are doing. They're not taking negative plays, especially on first down. And when you look at the time to throw, fastest time to throw in the NFL this week at a 2.08. That means that Baker Mayfield knew exactly where the ball was going immediately before the ball was even snapped. That, to me, again, is just praise for, I don't say this to take away from Baker Mayfield, that's praise to Liam Cohen and what he's doing as the offensive coordinator. This group is confident. They know what they're doing. They have a plan when they go out there. It's not just, hey, okay, all right, well, let's try to run it on this first down. there's a reason for what the Bucs are doing, and that reason is working for them. And you clearly saw that yesterday on early down work. I think that's an encouraging part moving forward this season.
Yeah, I think look, Liam Cohen to me was the big X factor for the Bucs season this year, because I personally thought Canales did a solid job last year. There was adjustments that had to be made mid-year, and then he kind of found the groove, and it was a little bit like this kind of perimeter ball control, passing to set up the run. You mentioned, okay, the Bucs, even when they ran it, they were solid. I thought all the runs in this game were very, very well timed, too. I just think they caught the Eagles in fronts that they wanted to catch them in. They ran when they needed to. They ran in good situations when they had two-way goes. You're right. It was a well-called game, and I think a game plan like this where, look, there's times when we know Mayfield wants to throw it vertically. We want to get down the field, right?
Right.
But this type of adjustment and that much of a game plan and it working that well, it goes in all week. This was obviously the product of, okay, since Tuesday they were going, okay, we're going to throw it quick, we're going to throw it short, and the athletes are going to win today, right? Mm-hmm. And then we'll set up vertical shots and stuff like that later. So you're absolutely right. And to me, the biggest question I had was, can we go from Canales to Cohen and have that same success? And they're absolutely doing it. I mean, we've seen it in two of their games where they've looked just spectacular. And the other two games, I think it was something, especially after last week with Denver, where that's what Denver wanted them to do. Mm-hmm. The Bucs wanted to get vertical, and Denver wouldn't let them, and they didn't have these adjustments. I think this is a really, really good bounce back for their offense and just the number of different things they can do with all their weapons.
Most impressive. Who you got?
Trev, you're from Tampa Bay. You're a Bucs fan. Been it your whole life, right?
Yeah, this is true.
There's three constants in Tampa: death, taxes, and Levante David.
Amen. Brother.
That's just the way it is. A 90.4 overall grade. 8 tackles, 2 sacks, including the strip sack that really put the game away. 5 pressures as a blitzer. He's getting to have fun as a blitzer, I think, more than ever in his career now. Also a pass breakup. Also 4 defensive stops. Still one of the best linebackers in the league. He's just ageless. Yeah. It's incredible what he keeps doing. And there may not be a player with less individual accolades, at least on paper, that deserves to make the Hall of Fame. I mean, the fact that he made, 1 or 2 Pro Bowls, if that? Has he ever made a Pro Bowl?
I think he's made 1, maybe 2 now.
Whichever it is, that's a shame, because this guy. I mean, people say it all the time. If he wasn't on all those bad Bucs teams that didn't make the playoffs for however long, he'd be a easy Hall of Famer, and he should be anyway.
He's made 2 second-team All-Pros in 2016 and 2020. He made 1 first-team All-Pro in 2013. Didn't even make the Pro Bowl that year. And the only year that he made the Pro Bowl was 2015, and that was not even any of the years that he got an All-Pro.
So basically, no one
watches him because he's in Tampa. He's at a Hall of Fame.
That's pretty much it. And he's been one of the best linebackers in the league for 14 years now? Is it 13, 14 years? 2011, I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of the best players of this generation, and he just keeps doing it, and he keeps signing 1-year deals, and he keeps honestly being arguably their best defensive player.
My most impressive. I knew you were going to talk about Levante David, so I was going to give that to you. I'm going to go with Vita Vea. I know the overall PFF grades were not great. Some Bucs fans were kind of tweeting about that this morning, but he did have the highest run defense grade on 3rd and 4th down when it came to all of their interior defense, or just all of their defensive linemen in general, which is what Vita Vea does best. And so even though it was kind of like a couple of splash plays, and we grade these plays, as in totality, his overall grade was a little bit lower, but the impact was still there on the 3rd and 4th downs that mean a lot, especially in run defense, which you're talking about a lot of goal line situations, a lot of 3rd and short situations. You're going up against a team that does the tush push very, very well, and so it's tough to stand out in that regard, but Vita Vea still was able to do it. He still gave you the splash plays that you love to see. My most disappointing, before we get to your most disappointing, Nick Sirianni. I see people in the chat talking about Nick Sirianni and just the coaching staff of the Eagles in general. I mean, could not have been less inspired, it feels like, coming out of this game. And this is a game where you had a lot of different question marks. You won a game in New Orleans last week that was sort of tough to pinpoint, like, okay, this was very tangible for you moving forward, and you really wanted to start this game well, and they were flat on their face in both categories. They're bottom 10 in the league in terms of EPA per play, so on the offensive side of the ball. This is for this week. And they were bottom 10 in EPA per play allowed as well. So they were a bottom 10 team in EPA per play, in the EPA per play metric on both sides of the football. And I think that gets even worse when you split it up between the first half and the second half. So to have your team come out as flat as they have was really, really disappointing. You knew Tampa was going to look for a bounce back. You needed a lot more from your guys. I get it. And you're about to talk about this in a second. No Devontae Smith, no A.J. Brown. It's rough. It's tough, right? I mean, like those are two of your biggest names, the guys that are big time playmakers for you. Everybody's got injuries. Everybody's going through it. Look at the Chargers this past week, right? I mean, the Chargers have injuries to everybody. They're playing hurt. Joey Bosa's not in there. Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater, like Justin Herbert's hurt. Like all of these guys are playing hurt and they're out. And what do the Chargers do? They take the Chiefs down to the wire because Jim Harbaugh is a good coach. And I was looking for so much more for Sirianni because if the win-loss record starts to tick in the other direction for the Eagles, those voices against Sirianni, unfortunately because of how last year ended as well, are going to get real loud. And this was a disappointing performance for him.
And I'm glad you mentioned the way last year ended is because, rematches, especially when they're so close to the previous game, are so much about coaching. And when you really look at it, you've got this game they just played, and then the loss in the wild card round last year. That's only 4 games ago. And we essentially watched the same game twice.
Yeah.
There was nothing about this game that looked any different. I could see Todd Bowles making adjustments even on defense, whereas in the playoff game, he sent 0 blitz at Jalen Hurts constantly. And in this game, he was showing it and then dropping some guys out and showing different looks. Like Todd Bowles and the Bucs staff came ready with changes. Even though they won the game, they dominated that game. And it's actually easier to fall asleep when you win a game like that and you have a rematch coming and going, okay, well, let's just do the same things. And the Bucs made the adjustments, and the Eagles didn't. We watched the same game that we watched in the wild card round last year, even with 2 new coordinators.
Yep.
And you just go,
yep.
Okay, so, and again, most disappointing, look, it is the Eagles wide receivers. And like you mentioned, life is hard. Life is hard without A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. You're down your 2 best receivers, but you got to make something of it. And I know Dallas Goedert had a $170 last week. We can't expect him to do that again. So, look, they traded for Jahan Dotson. It seemed kind of weird on both sides when they did it. Not much going on. You've got Jahan Dotson and Paris Campbell and Johnny Wilson, all these guys getting shots. And I get it. They shouldn't be expected to produce at a crazy level, but they had 7 catches for 34 yards. So we lose Brown and Smith, and we just can't function at all. It just seems odd to me, especially if you fall behind and, you can't just rely on Saquon Barkley and Dallas Goedert and things like that. This was a problem. Even with Brown and Smith, I kind of had the question the entire offseason. I go, okay, who's the other guy? Who's the third guy? Because usually teams now look, you're in 11 personnel most of the time, right? They don't have a third guy. And now without Brown and Smith, they don't even have a first and second guy. So you can't just be dead in the passing game either, especially in a game that you fell behind. So, no, it's a tough day for the Eagles. And right now, we haven't seen a lot of signs that this year is different from the second half of last year.
Bengals-Panthers, next game that we're talking about here. Cincinnati wins this one 34-24 on the road, get their first win of the season. We'll highlight the top 5 graded players for the Bengals first. Alex Kapp at the top of the list with an 86.2. Then we go to wide receiver T. Higgins with a 75.3. Cornerback Dax Hill with a 75.2. DJ Turner with a 73.8. And then tight end Eric All with a 73.4. Joe Burrow would have been number 2 on this list if we weren't separating quarterbacks. He had an 81.0. On Carolina's side of things, Shaq Thompson with a 79.5, but he went out with an injury in this one, and it does not look good. Wide receiver Deontay Johnson with a 71.5. Running back Chuba Hubbard, 69.5. Edge rusher Jadeveon Clowney with a 69.4. And then offensive tackle Taylor Moton with a 67.6. Andy Dalton, good performance for him. Almost the top number for all Carolina Panthers here with a 79.1. Dalton, what is your stat that told the story here from this one?
I kind of have several, and I really think, I know the Bengals won. It was a good bounce back for them, and their offense looked good for the second week in a row. But
don't take anything away from Quinn and Eli producing this show.
No,
come on.
I know,
we got to give them something. They were 0-3 before
It's
this.
always good to get your first win of the year.
All right,
it's good to see Burrow and those guys look good. But if a
lot
of this game felt like to me that the Panthers did a lot of the things that losing football teams do. Okay, 11 missed tackles, including three of them on that Jamar Chase touchdown. They missed 3 tackles.
That was tough.
There was several. There was a couple of times late in the game when they could have made one more stop to get back in it. That I was like, they're there. And then the Panthers, tackling was a problem. They dropped 4 balls. They had a great drive on their first drive of the game. It was like 8 or 9 minutes. They got all the way down to the 1-yard line and didn't punch it in. They committed the cardinal sin of giving up back-to-back touchdowns at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half. They went 1 for 3 on on fourth down. I went back and watched a lot of this game, and it felt like the Panthers just did all of the things that lose you football games in every big moments, whether it was a missed tackle, whether it was, a drop on a big play. I don't remember who it was down the sideline. It might have been Deontay Johnson, but somebody down the sideline could have had a big play and dropped the ball. It was just times when it was like, when the Panthers needed to execute, they just didn't. It was just like an execution. And Andy Dalton was really good again in this game.
He was.
This game was not at all on Andy Dalton to me.
No.
There was just moments in this game when I was like, that's the play to be made, and then it's just not. And they just didn't.
Yeah.
They just didn't play winning football in this game. And look, the Bengals were good, right? I think at least their defense was better than it was last week. It's not saying a whole lot, but Burrow was good.
Secondary was.
Burrow was good. The receivers were good. The Bengals played Bengals football. They didn't screw it up. The only throw from Burrow that was real bad was the interception. I don't know what was going on there, but otherwise Burrow was really good. I just felt like when I went back and watched it, I just felt like, man, the Panthers left so much on the table, and they probably could have won this game, albeit it was a high-scoring game. But it just was a lot of self-inflicted wounds.
Walt in the chat wants to make sure that I shout out University of Illinois grad Chase Brown.
2 touchdowns?
2 touchdowns in this one. 15 attempts, 80 rushing yards, 5.3 yards per carry average. That's a juice that they're looking for back there. All due respect to Zach Moss. I think
they ran the ball well in this game.
It is a nice little two-headed monster. It really is. Like Joe Mixon got a ton of volume for them over the last, 4 or 5 years, and you knew that you were going to have to break up that volume a little bit. I think they're coming into their own of, hey, this is like a Chase Brown type of run. This is a Zach Moss situation, and they're getting better at that. They're getting better at identifying that. But good shout out by Walt there to give Chase Brown a shout out and make sure that he got in the show. My stat that told the story, I said this in the preview show going into this past week. Very clearly, the Bengals, for as hampered as they looked through the first couple of weeks of the season, they were missing Jamar Chase and T. Higgins being what they need to be. And it's sort of a duh, right? I mean, 2 great receivers. When you miss them, the identity's not really there in your offense. But those 2 guys in this past game, in this win, they accounted for 51.8 of the threat percentage on the team. T. Higgins had a 14.0 average depth of target. Chase had a 9.6 average depth of target. No other player, other than a Andre Yosevich catch, 1 catch, had an average depth of target above 2. Above 2. This is their entire passing offense, but guess what? It worked. It's going to be a two-headed monster with this team. Doesn't matter. The fact that both of these guys are back means that the Bengals can put up 20, 30 points every single week. And I think that this is probably the tip of the iceberg. I think that they would say that they probably still left some stuff out there on the field. Obviously, you had the massive Jamar Chase catch, but the consistency there wasn't quite there for Jamar Chase, who only had 3 receptions in this game, one of them going for 63 yards because it was that big play. But they're going to get more in sync. I don't think the Bengals are going anywhere. I really don't. I think this is a team that is going to be competitive to the end. Playoffs are absolutely still in the conversation here for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Trey Hendrickson injury, depending on what it is, a little tricky. We'll get to that in a second, but I still think that this team is legit. What's the most impressive for you?
For me, it's the Bengals' offensive line, and we've talked a lot in the past. Everybody's talked a lot in the past about their offensive line and the struggles that they have sometimes, but really good. Their front 5 was really good in this game, and they gave up only, I think I have 5 pressures here that they gave up. Their front 5, 80.1 pass pro grade, solid run blocking day as well. You mentioned Chase Brown and Zach Moss still had good days running the ball. I think we have to give credit. Amarius Mims is coming along at right tackle. He's not at that elite level yet, but I think if you have one weak spot on your offensive line, it's not bad. We've seen too many years in the past where the Bengals, the entire unit, was a struggle. I think their offensive line played well in this game. Is it an elite Carolina pass rush? No, but the Bengals took care of business up front. They gave Burrow clean pockets, and if you give Joe Burrow clean pockets, he's an elite quarterback. And I wonder about, you mentioned Chase and Higgins. There's like all these things like reads and stuff and reading defenses and this guy and this rotation and that. Do you think in their offense it's just Chase, Higgins, check down? Is that basically just their offense?
Essentially.
Much, yeah.
I mean, those are the average of the targets, right?
I wonder if in
14, 9.6, and then 2.
I need to know if that's written down in a Bengals playbook. Listen, just every play. All right, what's the read? Chase, Higgins, check down, and just done. That's it. It's simple, but maybe they say sometimes simple works better.
I don't know if you were too young for this. Do you know the show Hey Arnold?
Of course.
Okay, do you remember the episode where he's playing on a basketball team and the coach's son is on the team and the game plan the coach says is literally get the ball to Tucker no matter what? Like that's literally the entire offensive game plan. That is sort of how I feel with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Shout out to anybody who is the appropriate age to watch Hey Arnold and gets that reference.
What a time the late 90s were, huh?
Oh, just some elite cartoons coming out of Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. You really do love to see it. Next game that I want to get to. Oh, wait. We got most disappointing. Oh, I got most impressive, too. Man, I was ready to get to the next one.
Skipping ahead.
Felt like I had that transition right there. Most impressive, Chuba Hubbard. Because this is back-to-back weeks for him. Second straight game that he had over 100 rushing yards. 18 carries for 104 yards this week. 4 targets for 4 catches. 17 yards as well. They are using him in the passing game. And Chuba Hubbard's success to me is more of a bigger picture of the fact that Carolina fans, you're not going to win a lot of football games this season. It just kind of is what it is. The proof's going to be in the pudding. You basically already have your cards on the table what this season was going to be. But Andy Dalton's presence shows you that this offense, even as it's currently constructed, can still be balanced. You can get good production out of the receivers you have and out of the running backs and the offensive line. Andy Dalton is showing you that. So
Let's be real though for a second. Okay, they're 1-3, but everybody else in the division's 2-2. They're not playing suddenly with Andy Dalton. They're not. I don't think they're playing that.
No, wait. Tampa's not 2-2.
Yeah, they lost to Detroit and then they lost last week.
No, they beat Detroit.
Oh, they beat Detroit. Sorry,
yeah,
my bad. They're 3. No, my bad. They were supposed to lose to Detroit. No, my fault on that. But still. Okay, even the way the Bucs, they've played 2 good games.
No,
the Panthers aren't playing. They're not playing that bad of football.
We try to nail teams in the coffin when they lose 2 games to start the season.
I don't think either way. I don't think they have to mail it in though.
No.
These last 2 weeks, they've played pretty good.
But I don't think the team is necessarily good enough to be a playoff team. Could they be like a 6-7 win team? Yes, they could. What I'm trying to say is they're not going to make the playoffs this year, but you're probably in a situation where you are drafting or bringing in some sort of a quarterback. If you upgrade at all whatsoever at quarterback, or you get the franchise guy in there, or just you continue to invest, defense is rough. Obviously, it's where they got to get better this offseason. But all that to say, I think Panthers fans were down horrendous 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
and I don't think they're down horrendous now. And again, the Chuba Hubbard most impressive. That sort of is evidence to that this team can be good. Even beyond hey, Andy Dalton's playing well. Okay, well, he was going to play better than Bryce Young because it couldn't get any worse. The run game's also better.
And part of playing Andy Dalton, as much as getting better quarterback play, was getting a fair evaluation and fair development of the rest of your guys. Like Chuba, and honestly, they're starting to get Xavier Legette going. That's a huge deal. Big deal, first-round pick, wide receiver. They need to get vertical. This was part of it as well, even if they're not going to make a playoff push or any of that. But they're getting a fairer evaluation of the rest of their team. And who said what happened here? I can already see it.
No, people are talking about the Hey Arnold reference, and then one of the comments said Sam Darnold Part 2 in Carolina for next year.
No.
Yeah, probably not.
No. Probably not. I heard somebody say, "What about Sam Darnold, future for the Jets?" I'm like, we already did that once.
Yeah, but
they'll screw it up again.
No, you got to come back.
No,
you know what the comeback is for the Jets? Geno comes back when Rodgers hangs him up.
I don't know what the solution is. We'll get there later.
We'll get to the Jets.
We'll
get to the Jets.
Will get there.
Really quick, most disappointing for you. Who you got?
Honestly, I was already worried about the Bengals D-line coming into this game, and now it's even more so with FAU legend Trey Hendrickson going down for, it doesn't sound like, I think they described it as a neck stinger, but if Hendrickson misses any time, I honestly, this is where even when they were 0-3, I wasn't that worried about the offense because Higgins was going to get healthy and Chase was going to be Jamar Chase. That's what he is, and Burrow was going to be Burrow. I was extremely worried already about this defensive line, and if Hendrickson's hurt, if he misses any time at all, they have to play Baltimore next week.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Good timing.
I don't know how they do anything. Even with Hendrickson, it would have been hard enough. I don't know how they do anything up front without him.
No, it's rough. You got to hope that the bad pass blocking that the Ravens had for the first 2 games of the season, that's what shows up for you. Because right now, it's bad for Cincinnati. Even if you include Hendrickson's performance over the last 4 weeks and what he has played, 6 total pressures this week in week 4. That was 31st in the NFL. 42 total pressures on the season. That is tied for 31st. The only team that has less than them is the Titans, and they haven't played yet this week. That's it. That's the only other team that has less total pressures than them. So they got to figure it out. They got to be able to get after the quarterback. Jags-Titans, next game that we want to talk about.
Texans.
Jags-Texans, the other game that we want to talk about here. Jags-Titans will come up at some point later this season. Maybe I was just previewing that. You
Twice
don't know.
even.
This is true. This is how division games work. The Houston Texans win this game at the buzzer. Well, not at the buzzer, but coming down to the wire. 24-20. Let's take a look at the Houston Texans' top-graded players. Nico Collins remains at the top. Just one of the best wide receivers that we have in this league. Last year, not a fluke at all whatsoever. 89.8 overall grade. Cornerback Derek Stingley next on the list with a 79.1. Stephon Diggs with a 77.1 as the number 3 guy. Azeez Al-Shaair with a 73.1. Running back Cam Akers with a 73.0. And then C.J. Stroud with a 74.5. Flipping sides to Jacksonville. Josh Hines-Allen, their edge rusher, 82.1 overall grade. Brandon Scherf with an 81.5. Brian Thomas Jr., their rookie wide receiver. Not Star Wars, not a Wookiee. 81.1. Offensive tackle Cam Robinson with an 80.0. Defensive tackle Mason Smith with a 75.2, and then Trevor Lawrence, a 57.9. Jags now 0-4 on the season. They are the only winless team. They're in sole control of the number 1 overall pick for the 2025 NFL Draft. Just want to say, shameless plug, NFLSC, we're doing a mock draft later today. Jags will be picking number 1. What was the stat that told the story here, Dalton?
Real quick, can you imagine a Wookiee in a football uniform? Pads and helmet and everything? That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
Got to be playing left tackle, right? Or nose tackle.
Got the length. They're like 8 feet tall, aren't they?
Oh, 3-4? Yeah. No, 3-4 end, you know?
Oh, that could work.
You know, J.J. Watt comp.
Just get the bench going. Yeah,
right,
I feel you.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jaguars really struggling to cover. 46.2 coverage grade.
Not good.
In this game. 46.2 team coverage grade. 7 missed tackles. They allowed 20 first downs through the air and 2 touchdowns. And for the season, they've given up the 2nd most pass yards per game and the 4th best passer rating. We saw last week they went man-to-man a lot against the Bills. Didn't work so well. They didn't give up as many explosive this week. They went a little more zone, a little more kind of sitting back in cover 2, some too high coverages, and letting Stroud work through them, and he kind of worked through them anyway. This Jaguars team right now without Tyson Campbell, they're just struggling to cover. They're struggling with a lot of things, but struggling in coverage against a quarterback like C.J. Stroud. I mean, there's too many guys running open. And I know Stroud is great. And I know he makes the C.J. Stroud plays and he gets on the move. He can do everything, but too many guys just running wide open. It's been a theme so far this year. They are just struggling to cover. And for an offense that is struggling to manufacture and sustain drives, actually I thought their offense looked better in this game than they have. Better, but not great. They need their defense to step up too. I know Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback and he gets all the talk, and how much do we blame Trevor Lawrence, and is he a bust, and this and that and the other thing, but help me out here on defense. And they had a late lead, and I know the Jags, there was part of this game too where the Jags just didn't put them away. They had the ball. It was the very end of the third quarter, early in the the fourth quarter. The first play of the fourth quarter was at the 1-yard line, 4th and 1 from the 1. Didn't put them away then. A couple of chances on the next few drives to put the Texans away then, and there's just no complimentary football being played on this team.
No.
None.
No, and it goes back to sort of the conversation that we've had with the Jags. And my stat that told the story is a stat that I've brought up already multiple times this year for Jacksonville. It is their third down percentage, because they are a team that is bottom 3 in the NFL when it comes to third down percentage. You are not going to be able to succeed on offense the way that you need to week in and week out if you are so poor. If you are as poor as the Jags are on third down. 33% this past week against Houston. They're just 4 for 12. I mean, when it comes to the money down and continuing drives, you talk about, okay, this is a team that had the lead, right? I mean, it was a team that had the lead against the Dolphins in week 1. It feels like the Jags, they're not horrible. They've had some bad games, like the game against the Bills was bad, obviously, but this is a team that's been close in some of their losses, and it's against good football teams, right?
They were 8-3 last year. This isn't that long ago.
Right.
Week 11 or 12 of last year is not long ago, and all of a sudden they just can't find any sort of way to win.
They cannot do what they need to do to sustain drives and have an identity on the offensive side of the football. They don't. The defense, it's going to be more cyclical anyways. Defense is just a roller coaster. It often is. The offense cannot be as much of a roller coaster as it is right now, especially when you have an offensive-minded head coach. Doug Peterson was brought in to stabilize these things. Press Taylor's the offensive coordinator because hopefully the things that he is able to call You have a lot of continuity with Trevor Lawrence and the confidence of where the ball was going, and it just doesn't feel like they have any of that going back to the last, 6-7 games of last season? So, to me, Jacksonville does not know what they want to do. They don't have bread and butter plays. They don't have a go-to player when they really need it, when the game is on the line. And like I said last week, it's always something with this team, and to me, that manifests itself in how bad they are on third down, because there is just too much that can go wrong with this Jacksonville team right now. And it sucks to watch because I think they're really talented, but they are in the driver's seat for the number 1 overall pick, and Doug Peterson's got a tough uphill climb to not be the first head coach fired.
I'm with you, considering what we've seen from them so recently, the playoff run in 22 and an 8-3 start last year. It's shocking that they're 0-4. It is. It doesn't make sense with the amount of talent. If you would ask me, hey, which team, if you had to pick one team in the NFL to start 0-4, who would it be? I would not pick the Jaguars. 100. There's no way. I'm like, they're going to find a win with the talent they have and Trevor Lawrence, and they're going to find something. But here we are. Let me get to Lawrence real quick, actually, for the most disappointing part, because I'll be honest, I'm a Lawrence defender. I think he's really good. I think he's a franchise guy. I think he earned the big contract that he got. Right now, he is pressing. You can see it. And you mentioned it on third down. They're in a lot of bad situations on third down, too. And part of this is Lawrence, much like a handful of other guys that I've talked about. He's forcing it downfield, okay? Threw it downfield really well against Miami in week 1. But the last 3 weeks, it's way too much. In this game, on throws of 10 or more yards, 5 for 16 with a 57 passing grade. Over the last 3 weeks, he leads the NFL with 46 attempts thrown 10 or more yards in the air, but he's 15 for 46 with a 34.8 adjusted completion percentage. They're just not. He's trying too much to hit home runs and get the ball downfield and pressing. And honestly, mechanically, and it's funny because when Doug Peterson got there, the first thing he did was fix Trevor Lawrence mechanics. You could see it. We could go on the tape later, and I could show you the footwork and the base and different things. He fixed his mechanics because when they were under Urban Meyer in 21, train wreck. Footwork was a train wreck. And Peterson, it took some time. Peterson came in and fixed it, and it's starting to unravel. The fundamentals are starting to notice if you watch any of these balls, he's throwing 10 or more yards. Even the ones that's caught, they're all high. Every single one of them is high, all of them. And if it's getting to be now where Lawrence is going to have issues mechanically and with his footwork, and we're crawling back towards 2021 form, then you have a problem because you can't let that progress. Lawrence is still extremely young.
Right.
You cannot let that progress go backwards because the rest it is part of it. It is, to me, it is a team-wide problem. You see him trying to carry this team, but if the fundamentals get away from him, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt about it. And that's why I think that a lot of Jags fans are like, yo, let's get these dudes out of here. Honestly, if Jacksonville picks number 1 overall, I've got to imagine that no one currently in the front office or coaching staff will have a say in who makes that pick.
No, and honestly, for them, if I'm picking first overall, I'm trading down.
Yeah, obviously, I think that is something that you can't do. Travis Hunter's really good, though.
he sure is.
Hunter's really good.
But for as many things as he can do, can he fix their O-line problem?
No.
Can he fix their D-line problem?
Maybe. As a corner.
Blitzing
once in
a while.
Right.
Maybe like 2-3 plays a game he can fix
that.
But it's just they have
I know what you're saying.
Team-wide issues. And to blame it all on Lawrence does have his problems right now. He's absolutely pressing. I don't think there's any question he's pressing. But it's because the rest of this team is just they're not playing well enough to support him. And they can't afford this organization cannot afford for Trevor Lawrence to fail in this period of time.
For sure. No, especially because they don't even have the luxury anymore of, we got him on the rookie contract.
Nope.
No, you don't. So now you're actively just burning money if you're not doing what you need to do to surround him with a better team. And I think they do. I think it's some good pace. I think the reason why it's so frustrating is because it shouldn't be this bad. And that's why I think that, unfortunately, a lot of the fingers go back to pointing at the coaching staff. The most impressive of this game, I'm going to go with cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. You saw him in the overall top 5 grades. 90.3 coverage grade in this game. 4 targets, only 2 catches allowed for 11 yards, had 2 forced incompletions. And when it comes to single coverage specifically, 3 targets in single coverage, only 1 catch allowed. Derek Stingley Jr., another week where he is solidifying himself as one of the best young corners in the game. Not even best young corners in the game. I'll take the adjective out. One of the best corners in the game. There. I think he's having a fantastic year. Who's your most impressive?
I'll go to the other side. One of the best wide receivers in the game is Nico Collins. And it's
Truly.
funny because someone asked me maybe Thursday or Friday, they hit me up and they said, who around the league would you guarantee this week has a big week? And I said, Nico Collins. It's just too good a matchup against this Jags team, and he's that good. And for all the weapons the Texans have, he's the best one. 12 catches, 151 yards, touchdown, man, zone, you name it, he kills it all. He's a number one receiver, and for as many big-name guys, Stephon Diggs had a really good day yesterday. Tank Dell's really good. Dalton Schultz, the backs, CJ, anything you want. Nico Collins is their number one guy, though. He is one of the best receivers in the NFL, and he's proven it every single week.
I'm assuming with most disappointing being Trevor Lawrence, you kind of already went on there.
Yeah.
Okay, right, okay. Most disappointing for me, Houston's penalties. Did not know this until I looked it up, but 12 penalties for 93 yards against Jacksonville. They have 40 penalties and 326 penalty yards against. That's the most in the NFL. So, good football team. Still think Houston's a really good football team. When you talk about being number one in the NFL in penalties in a bad way, penalties called against you and penalty yards against you,
can't beat yourself.
That's the kind of stuff that shows up in January. You can't be doing that. I think the division feels like it's, I don't want to take anything away from the Colts, but it feels like it's going to be their division at the very top. So I don't know if they're going to be at risk of losing that home field advantage, or at least getting home field for one of those games. But when it comes to playing the better teams, you can't be doing that stuff. And I think Houston's way too good to be doing that.
And honestly, I'll be honest with you, the Jags should have won this game.
Yes.
They should have. Yes. They should have won this game.
Again, if Jacksonville can convert on third down even 2 more times, maybe this game's different.
Yeah.
So, Rams-Bears, the next game that we're talking about here. The Chicago Bears come away with a victory 24-18. Looked a little bit ugly, but hey, they don't have to look pretty. They just have to be in the shape of a W. Chicago Bears, their number one overall graded player was Montez Sweat in this one, 76.1 overall grade. Linebacker TJ Edwards with a 75.0, safety Jaquan Brisker with a 71.4, running back DeAndre Swift a 70.8, then wide receiver DJ Moore with a 67.5. Caleb Williams in this game, 63.0 on the other side of things. Grades look better for the Rams. Defensive tackle Braden Fisk out here with a 90.6 overall grade, and defensive tackle Kobe Turner right below him with an 89.4. They sure whoop up on the Bears offensive line. Safety Quentin Lake with an 83.4. Offensive tackle Alaric Jackson with an 80.4. Offensive guard Kevin Dotson with a 76.9, and then Matthew Stafford with a 65.3. What was the stat that told the story here, Dalton?
So this is actually the third game in a row now that I'm going to say the team that lost probably should have won.
I don't want to sound sour to Bears fans because they got the win.
They got away with a win.
But it's hard to not feel that way watching this game and just trying to look for performances of, okay, this player or this thing or this is the reason why the Bears won this game. And you go,
and it's
Rams played better.
And it's funny because, so the Rams, it felt like the Rams were constantly in the red zone in this game and just not punching it in. They were 1 for 4 in the red zone.
Oh, good pull. I did not see that. 2
turnovers, including Stafford with a fumble at his own 15 or 20-yard line that directly led to a touchdown. Then the interception was on the last drive of the game when they could have gone down for a game-winning drive. They did miss a field goal. They did not convert the 2-point conversion that would have tied the game, actually. It would have tied the game at 17. The Bears, on their first 4 drives, had 41 total yards. And yet, after those 4 drives, they led 7-6. The Rams they didn't finish drives. They made mistakes. And even, Kobe Turner, I'm going to give you Kobe Turner as my most impressive. And this,
you talk about him.
Great player. We already know, second-year player.
Yeah.
Him and Fisk, I'll tell you what, you get those two going like that more often. Not that you wouldn't miss Aaron Donald, because he could walk out there and be the best player right now because he's Aaron Donald. But that's exactly what they were looking for when it comes to Turner and Fisk on the inside. But Kobe Turner in the run game was a monster. 86.3 run defense grade, all right? And here's it almost sums up the Rams' day, okay? They get the touchdown. They don't get the 2-point conversion. It's 17-15, right? They were playing well in the interior against the run when Kobe Turner played 50 of the Rams' 60 snaps in this game. But one of those 10 snaps, you know when it was? the DeAndre Swift touchdown that put the Bears up by 2 scores. The one snap, one of the very few snaps that Kobe Turner came off the field, they run right down the pipe at his replacement, and Swift scores, and then they're down 2 scores. Like, that just sums it up to me of, like, the Rams, not a whole lot of depth. They need their stars. The stars played well, but you have to survive a snap or two without them. And they just made, again, this is a third game I've had in a row here where it's like the Rams made the mistakes that losing teams make. And to the Bears' credit, they ran the ball better than they did in the first 3 weeks, and they kind of just didn't screw it up.
Yeah,
they let the Rams screw it. Because honestly, I'll be honest with you, if the Rams had Nakua and Kupp, or maybe just one of them, the Rams probably win this game. But they went out there and look, you just mentioned it with whoever it was, the Eagles. You have what you have, and you have to go out and play well. And the Rams, honestly, just didn't. They didn't finish drives. They made mistakes, and they kind of. To me, they kind of let the Bears have one.
No, I'm with you. My most disappointing was just the Rams' lack of firepower, because if they had a little bit more of it, again, I'm with you. I think that they win this game. The stat that told the story, though, I don't want to sound too negative on the Bears who did win this football game. I will point this out. There was a story sort of going into this game, I think it was Jay Glazer who reported it, that offensive players met with Shane Waldron earlier this week, and they were like, hey, let's liven it up a little bit here. Like, we got to start getting a little bit more aggressive on the offense side of the ball. And apparently Caleb Williams was one of those players.
What's funny to me about that is the last 2 weeks they've actually gotten under center a lot more.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily like getting under center or like being in shotgun or things like that. They just want to like dial up a little bit more. Like, they don't want to be as conservative. And I will say, I know there's been a lot of like freaking out that's gone on. Everybody's freaking out. Each week they have gotten better when it comes to EPA per pass. Week 1, negative 0.308 EPA per pass. Week 2, negative 0.274 EPA per pass. Okay, so a little bit better. Week 3, negative 0.038. Okay, almost even EPA per pass. And then yesterday against the Rams, a positive 0.17 EPA per pass. So every single week it has gotten a little bit better for this team. Now, has it really caught fire the way that we've kind of looked at this offensive unit and said, like, look at all the weapons that they have? No, not quite yet. We're still getting there. But it is at least going in the right direction. And I do think the fact that it was their best game yet in terms of EPA per pass, that allowed them to capitalize on the Rams not capitalizing. And I think sometimes that's all that matters. My most impressive, since you already talked about your most impressive in Kobe Turner, my most impressive, I'll give a nod to DeAndre Swift and how well he played. 93 rushing yards, the most from him since week 16 of last year. 4 missed tackles forced. That was the most for him this season. 7 catches on 7 targets for 72 receiving yards. That's his most receiving yards in a single game since week 7 of 2021. Remember when he was coming into the draft, that was the Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Taylor, and he was in that class as well. And a lot of people loved DeAndre Swift because of what he could be in the passing game. And we're talking about a guy who, 72 receiving yards, that's his single game high since 2021. He just has not been used quite as explosively in that area as we probably thought that his career could have been up to this point. But it was great to see him get more involved in that area. Feels like it's going to be a little bit more of a committee in the backfield anyways, but Carmen made a really good point on the preview show. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing for DeAndre Swift. It simply could mean that Waldron and the offense are more open-minded to getting more touches and carries to other running backs and could just put them in more advantageous situations. So less volume overall, but more efficiency from each of these players. And I feel like that is what we got out of DeAndre Swift this past week. So that's both of our most impressive. I talked about most disappointing being the Rams' lack of firepower, because I think they could have got a win here in this one if they had a little bit more of it. What about you? What is your most disappointing?
It was just tough to watch the interior pass protection in front of both of these quarterbacks. The Rams interior with a 37.8 pass pro grade. I know they got some injuries and young guys playing up front. And the Bears interior, I do get a little worried. We were already worried about it. And Nate Davis got benched for Matt Pryor, but then had to come back into this game because Tevin Jenkins is hurt now. And that's a guy who anytime you hear about an injury for him, you get worried about, because Tevin Jenkins is really their best interior player. but he's always hurt. He missed, 40 or he's missed like such a significant chunk of games in his career that's a spot where they were already struggling. And if they lose Jenkins for some amount of time, I get really worried about the Bears' offensive line because I could argue he's the best one.
David Lewis in the comments said, shockingly, the Eagles misused him last year. David, going through it right now. Going through it in the chat.
I just, honestly, I think you make a great
to
point, though. Swift has never been that workhorse guy.
Sure.
Like, he's not going to be a guy that gets 30 or 35 touches. Like, I think he is a guy who can be really good with 15 to 17 touches. He's never, even in Detroit, he was never a workhorse guy like that, even though he was drafted in the first round. He just shouldn't have been. I don't even think he was that at Georgia, honestly.
No, I think that was the big sort of detractor to him, is he didn't have the volume that the other guys did. So he has been more, to me, a more efficient back than a big volume back, and I think maybe the Bears are recognizing that there. Sonny said the Bears need to draft the 2 biggest offensive linemen next year. Can I interest you in one Holland Pierce from Rutgers? You know how big Holland Pierce is? Their offensive tackle?
I don't know the exact numbers, but that's an extra large person.
6'8". 350 pounds. He used to be 450, and then they got him in shape and got the diet, the nutrition when he got to Rutgers, started playing offensive tackle. He is hilariously huge. And so, Sonny, if you're looking for the biggest offensive lineman in the class,
give you another one.
Holland Pierce from Rutgers.
Minnesota, Ariante Ursary.
Oh, yeah, huge.
Not only is he a huge kid and a great blocker.
Also good.
Also, there's an interview on the College Channel with him and Max Chadwick you need to check out.
Flawless play. Flawless.
To get a great player and a bump in there, I had to do it. Sorry.
No, that's fantastic.
Anyway, go on.
Hey, when you were hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, right? That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. We do a lot of hiring here at PFF, and when we're looking for people, it's not just a resume, right? You see the resume, you got to get the qualifications. They obviously have to be up for the job. But it's the people that you're adding to your team. That is what makes the difference. That is what makes a good hire. LinkedIn, it's not just a job board. They help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively looking for new jobs but might be open to the perfect role. I think that sometimes that can be the best employees that you can hire, honestly. In a given month, 70% of LinkedIn users do not visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're just looking in the wrong place, plain and simple. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get qualified with candidates within 24 hours. You can hire a professional like a professional on LinkedIn. They know that small businesses, you guys are wearing so many hats out there. You might not have the time that you want to invest into the resources to make a great hire. That's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/PFF. That is linkedin.com/PFF to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, here we go. The game that you said you didn't need to watch again. Probably watched enough of it. Broncos at Jets. The Broncos, 2-0 in the last 2 weeks. People forget that.
Defense playing great.
People do forget that. They come away with the thrilling, exhilarating 10-9 victory in the Meadowlands. So let's get to Denver. They earned the right. Their top 5 players in this game: offensive guard Ben Powers with an 83.3, offensive tackle Garrett Bowles with an 80.8, edge rusher John Franklin Myers with a 79.8, and then offensive guard Quinn Miners back to the offensive line here with a 79.3, cornerback Jaquan McMillan with a 76.8 at number 5, and then Bo Nix just a 48.9 quarterback grade. Yet they get the win here in this one. We flip over to the New York side of things. Linebacker Quincy Williams with a 91.1. Cornerback DJ Reed with a 90.2. Running back Braylon Allen, a 79.2. Linebacker Jamien Sherwood with a 74.6. And then wide receiver Mike Williams, a 74.0. Aaron Rodgers, in his own words, said that he left some throws out there. 68.7 overall grade in this one. Dalton, when it comes to your beloved Jets dropping this one to the Denver Broncos, what was your stat that told the story?
I had to find some numbers on this. It feels like, regardless of who the quarterback is or who the play caller is or who is on the offensive line, it has just felt like for the last couple of years that the Jets are not ready to play when the game starts. And the first quarter is just always been a problem. Getting off to good starts has been a problem, right? And whether it's, even in wins, if the defense keeps it low scoring and then we get the engine running on offense, and in this game they never did. It's a problem. Okay, so this week in the first quarter, they had a 40.8 offensive grade. And they didn't have a lot of good offensive grades. But usually, even with if it's a bad offense, you go, okay, you mentioned before with the first 15 plays of the first couple of drives or whatever, right? This year, the Jets in the first quarter are 27th in offensive grade. And in quarters 2 through 4, they are 8th. Last year, and I know the Jets are towards the bottom in a lot of offensive rankings, and I get that. Look, I get it. We had bad O-line. We're constantly rebuilding. It's all that stuff. Last year, last in offensive grade in the first quarter. For Robert Saleh's entire tenure, they are last in offensive grade in the first quarter. And this year, first 15 plays, that's usually what coaches talk about. You mentioned the scripted plays before. Mm-hmm. The second worst offensive grade in the league on their first 15 plays of a game.
It's not good.
It's not. And there's even been times I've seen it from the defense too, where last year there was some splits where it's like there's just times when they're just not ready to go, and the level of focus mentally, and 13 penalties, and the Texans are leading in penalties. You just mentioned it. I guarantee you the Jets are not far behind on that list. Penalties and just not being ready to roll in the first quarter, no matter who they're playing. It could be the best. The perfect example. Or last year they almost beat the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. But they played the first quarter. The first quarter they were awful. They got down 17-0. And then they almost came all the way back even with Zach Wilson and won. That's the Jets. It's just for some reason the first 15 minutes I don't know what it is at this point where it's just they are not ready to go until the second quarter starts. And in this game they try to get it to be like that, and some days it's just not going to go, especially when you have a defense playing as well as Denver's has the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's hard. It's hard to get the engine revving. These are things we don't see from teams like the 49ers. The 49ers come out firing first, right off rip. The Chiefs, a lot of times, those scripted first 15 to 20 plays are fantastic, right? We see these teams right now. I think Washington has that with even Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury right now.
Clearly,
yeah. Well, they have it on every drive right now, but they come out. It's just you get teams that are ready to play from the first whistle, and there's a theme where the Jets just aren't. It's not just this week. It's been for as long as I can remember in this tenure now, with or without Rodgers.
You cannot just punt on the first quarter like that. I did not know those stats for the Jets, and that's really good research by you because you're just not going to win enough football games.
If you watch a Jet game, you could probably just wait out until if the game's at 1, you could wait till 1:30 or 1:40 to turn it on. And it's been like this for honestly as the last couple of years. It's just they just never start well.
My stat that told the story: 100% precipitation. That's a stat. We're going to the Weather Channel app, and that's the stat that told the story for me because
doesn't help either. Yeah,
this was these two teams. I'm not trying to say that I'm letting the Jets off the hook. The Jets should have won this football game. I'm also not trying to take anything away from Denver, who won in on the road, tough situations. They got away with the win. Hats off to them. These two teams, 30th and 31st in offensive grade in Week 4. So two of the 3 lowest graded offenses in the NFL. Jets had a 65.1 adjusted completion percentage. That's 25th. And the Broncos had a 53.1, which is 32nd. Just zero passing in this game. It just wasn't going to happen. I mean, there were a couple of plays where they showed Bo Nix, and he's trying to throw the ball to the sideline, and it's just like wobbling.
Yeah,
it's completely fallen out of his hands. And Aaron Rodgers, I think, was a little bit better at mitigating it. But the stat that told the story here is that if this is a sunny day, if this is sunny in 75, the score is not even close to this. I'm not trying to take anything away from the Denver Broncos. I'm not trying to totally let the Jets off the hook. I'm not saying, if it didn't rain, the Jets would have 100% won the football game. Unfortunately,
you play in the conditions you're given. And even then, we talk about, then adjust it and run the ball and all of that.
Right.
Breece Hall had 6 carries for 4 yards.
No, it was bad. And I can take that right into my most disappointing, which is not Breece Hall. People want to talk about, Breece Hall, most disappointing. He had 10 carries for 4 yards, whatever it was. The blocking for Breece Hall this season has been bad. And I think that certainly in Week 4, it was terrible. Breece Hall, I mentioned 10 carries for 4 yards. 0.1 yards before contact through Week 4.
Yeah. They're definitely better in pass protection, but they're not. The run game is not getting.
2 of his games, he has a negative yards before contact average. This team does not want to block for Breece Hall. And the stats that he has accumulated have come through him making runs after contact because he is consistently getting hit in the backfield or at the line of scrimmage. So a lot of people out there who'd be like, oh, Breece Hall was so disappointing. I'm putting much more blame on the guys up front because when you have an average of 0.1 yards before contact through the first 4 weeks, those guys up front got to do the job way better. So that's my most disappointing. You can hit dealer's choice, most impressive, most disappointing, whatever.
I'll start with impressive. I'll give the Broncos credit. Patrick Surtain was awesome in this game.
Okay.
2 catches for 24 yards. I think one of them was for 1 yard, and the other one was just an outstanding catch by Garrett Wilson where he was inbounds by like a kneecap. I think he got 22 or 23 yards on that play. But no, they shadowed just like they did with Mike Evans last week. They shadowed Surtain on Wilson, and he was spectacular. 76.8 coverage grade, 2 catches, 24 yards, a forced incompletion. I think it goes beyond the box score with him. The level that he shut down and he won the battle against Garrett Wilson in this game was a huge factor for the Broncos' game plan and their execution, even for the rest of their defense, because he just shut Garrett Wilson down.
My most impressive, I'm going to go with Mike Williams because every single game, Mike Williams is getting better and better. 72.9 receiving grade in week 4. That was the best of any wide receiver on the team. When it comes to grades, targets, catches, and yards, it has increased every single week since he has come back from week 2 up to this point. He is getting more warmed up. We are seeing more towards the prime version of him when he was with the Chargers. I mean, that toe tap catch to the sideline, that's vintage Mike Williams, if you want to call something vintage Mike Williams. I mean, that is what he does. He is a sideline stud. When space is at a premium and he needs to go up and get it and just toe tap at the sideline to bring tough catches, back shoulders, going up and mossing cornerbacks. Like, that is what Mike Williams does, especially when it comes to deep down the field. He was showcasing that more so in week 4 than he ever had, and he's just getting better at it. So he was my most impressive. You're most disappointing here before we move on.
I'm officially worried about this Jets pass rush.
Okay.
And I know Will McDonald had 5 sacks, was it, in the first 3 games? But we talk about here all the time. It's not about sacks. It's about consistent pressure. They're just not creating that. A 52.4 pass rush grade as a team in this game. 26 opportunities, 5 pressures, and 3 of those 5 were unblocked. They're just not winning the battle up front right now. And this front 7, look, it hasn't played what we think is its best football, but right now they are pass rushing like a bottom 10 team. And John Franklin Myers had a great game for Denver. Bryce Huff is in Philly now. Jermaine Johnson tore his Achilles. This is not the same defensive line as last year. It's Quinnen Williams getting doubled every play, and it's Will McDonald trying to develop as he goes because he didn't get to play a whole lot last year. They can't find a pass rush. Actually, I think if this was a sunny, nice day, I think Bo Nix would have completed a lot of passes because he had a lot of clean pockets. This Jets front 7 and this pass rush, and I'm going to tell you something right now. They're playing Minnesota next week. I don't have an answer up front. That's a way better pass protecting unit than Denver is. I mean, we just talked about their pass protection. I don't know where the pass rush comes from for the Jets right now, and if they don't get off to better starts on offense, they're going to have problems in England next week.
Commanders Cardinals, the next game we want to review here. Commanders just absolutely put it on them. 42-14 final score. Did not see this one coming. I thought this would be a fun back and forth battle. It was one-sided. For Washington side of things, their 2 linebackers were the 2 top graded players on the team. Frankie Louvu with a 90.3 and Bobby Wagner with an 87.0. Edge rusher Dorrance Armstrong played well in this one as well. Got himself 2.5 sacks. He had an 80.0 PFF grade. Running backs Jeremy McNichols and Brian Robinson Jr. round out this top 5. McNichols with a 78.2 and then Robinson Jr. with a 78.0. Jaden Daniels would have been on that list, 82.7 PFF grade there. On Arizona's side of things, Max Melton, again, he didn't quite play the 25 snaps, but I wanted to give him a shout out here because his grade was so good, and when he was on the field, he was an impactful player. So He got an 87.7 overall grade. That was number 1 on the list. Offensive tackle Paris Johnson Jr., number 2 at an 83.9. Tight end Tip Ryman, the rookie, 79.3. Wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. with a 78.9. And then safety Garrett Williams with a 77.5 there at number 5. Kyler Murray, not his best day at the office, of 59.2 overall grade. Stat that told the story here for Commanders Cardinals. Dalton, what do you got?
This team is just firing on all cylinders, and they had that that scoring streak of consecutive drives scored on broken. It was broken, but not by a whole lot. They scored only on 7 of their 9 drives in this game, and that's the overarching thing. But everything's clicking. They ran for 216 yards. They threw for 233. The pass protection was spectacular because it was something that you had mentioned as a question mark in the preseason. Second straight week with a pass pro grade over 86 as a team. 86-1 this week, 86-3 last week. I don't care who it is. If it's a rookie, if it's a 40-year-old, if it's anything in between, you protect them, you have a shot. And they're protecting Jaden Daniels and the run blocking now, and they just everything. And I'll tell you, too, with Daniels, the threat of his feet, you can feel it in the run game, too. The amount that backside defenders have to freeze just on any read option and all of that stuff because of the threat of him, it's making their run game so much better than it was last year, too.
Yeah.
So everything right now is centered around Daniels and their entire offense. They're grooving right now. I mean, they are so efficient. And I think, you know what? You mentioned before about not wanting negative plays, especially on early downs. How about this? For the entire day, they had 1 play lose yardage. 1.
I believe it because my stat that told the story here for them, it's not something that we haven't brought up here before. It's the Commanders on third down. We've talked about their red zone and their third down percentage, but we talked when we were doing the Jacksonville review game how Jacksonville does not have an identity when their back is against the wall. When it is third down, when it's a money down, when they need to keep the drive going, very clearly, Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels have their identity, and they know exactly what they want to do on third down. 53.49 third down percentage. That is number 1 in the NFL through 4 weeks. 75% third down percentage versus the Cardinals, so that was even better than what their yearly average is. Get this, 0.715 EPA per play on third down. That's not only first in the NFL, no team in the league has had a third down EPA per play average above 0.30 since 2021. They're doubling up what would have been the number 1 EPA per play average on third down over the last 3 seasons. And the only reason why I didn't keep going back further is because the Packers had like a 0.46. So it's even almost double what the Packers had in the 2020 season. So it's the reason why we have to keep pointing this out is because it's not just that the Commanders are good on third down. They're insanely good. There's no stop in sight, and I say that, and of course they're going to go like 2 for 10 next week. But like,
yeah, now you win.
Right, I jinxed it. But we're talking about offensive coordinators and guys that could be head coaches next year. Cliff Kingsbury, I think, has a stigma about him as just this sort of like hot shot, good looking, spread offense, air raid. It worked in college, doesn't work in the NFL. But some people will point out that like it didn't really work in college. It didn't work with longevity with the Arizona Cardinals, which, by the way, in 2021, the number 1 team in EPA per play on third down was the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to start talking about Cliff Kingsbury as a head coaching candidate for next season. There are too many teams that want to nail it at quarterback, head coach combination for Cliff Kingsbury to not get not just a genuine look, but like maybe even the priority look for him to be, for what he is doing with Jaden Daniels. This, I think we're going to start to talk about, if this continues, and even if it goes down a little bit, because it's at way too high of a level, they will regress a little bit. But certainly if this is any telltale for how the rest of the season is going to be, they're going to be one of the better third down teams in the NFL. Jaden Daniels is going to continue to put on a performance that we marvel at every single week. Maybe he even wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. And if all of those things happen, you better believe Cliff Kingsbury is getting multiple head coaching interviews and is perhaps the priority for many teams. Jacksonville, perhaps, has a quarterback that could use somebody who knows what they're doing. And I don't know if I love that connection right off the bat. I'm just saying. He's having an unbelievable year as an offense coordinator. And I think those third down percentages and just how good they are is evidence to that. So what about your most impressive in this one?
Oh, Kingsbury's been great, but his quarterback's been just as good. And I know for a fact. I
didn't pick Jaden Daniels specifically for any of these because he was your QB1 last year, and I knew you needed to go
You
off.
know one of my favorite things on this show is doing a Jaden Daniels rant. He's just been spectacular, hasn't he? 26 of 30, 233 yards, a touchdown. Had the interception, missed a throw. Is what it is. You miss them sometimes. But 8 carries for 47 yards and a touchdown. No sacks in this game either. And the pass pro was great, and I know there's been a lot of talk about even at LSU, he took too many sacks, and he runs around and this and that. Well, he didn't take any in this game, so wasn't an issue. I just think you've got a guy right now, A, he's supremely confident. We know this. B, he just doesn't screw it up, Trevor. I mean, look, over the last 3 weeks, all right, rough first game. You get Todd Bowles as a rookie in your first game playing in Tampa, and it's just tough. Todd Bowles is hard for a rookie to play against. Hell, it's hard for Jalen Hurts to play against, apparently. 10 plays in the last 3 weeks where Jaden Daniels has earned negative grades. I'm excluding the quarterbacks playing tonight. Over the last 3 weeks, the only quarterbacks with less negatively graded plays who've played 3 games, Derek Carr and Lamar Jackson. And that's it. And the big thing for me coming out of LSU, for as much as all the flashy stuff was fun and the dual threat and the big plays and he had Malik Neighbors and we're winning the Heisman and we're setting records, he doesn't screw anything up.
No, those last 2 years at LSU, he was one of the most.
But even the 5 years, even the Arizona State tape, like it's not that
I didn't love the Arizona State tape.
But there's not so there's not a lot of high end positive, especially passing, right?
Yeah.
But he still didn't screw it up. He played 5 years in college football, and he had the lowest turnover worthy play rate in Power 5 history for us. That includes the Arizona State tape.
I didn't know that, including the Arizona tape.
That's not just the LSU.
The LSU tape was great.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But even at Arizona State, yes, the high-end passing wasn't there. We're working on it. He was a great runner, and he didn't screw it up. He was still, even then, hard to beat because he just doesn't – there's no self-inflicted errors. And now you're getting it where the big plays are coming. We saw it in last Monday's game, and we see it in this game. Even the interception in this game, the post, he tried to kind of had a little miscommunication-ish sort of thing. I forget if it was McLaurin. Somebody trying to split cover two with a post. Threw it behind him, missed the throw. Okay, but we're starting to take shots here. And the craziest thing now is now the Cardinals don't have a great defense. But you're seeing now, I mentioned the run game earlier, where backside defenders are freezing and it's opening up holes in the run game. In the passing game, they're starting to back defenses off because they're taking shots downfield now and the average depth of target's going up. And now you're getting it where the checkdowns have a ton of space. He has space to run underneath. And you have space to run because now you got 2 safeties back and they respect this team deep downfield. Washington right now, not only are they rolling and they're executing, they're manipulating defenses, and it's all centered around Daniels. They're just, you mentioned Kingsbury coaching a great game. Daniels at the center of this right now is just working it at a very high level.
No, there's no doubt about it. I'm going to go to the other side of things for the Commanders, give them a little bit of praise here. Defensive line, their best game of the season, 64.8 pass rush grade. That was the best out of the last 4 weeks. Dorrance Armstrong, 2.5 sacks in this one, 88.3 pass rush grade for him specifically. And it wasn't a world beater type of performance here for the Commanders, but it's just got to look a little bit better, right? We knew that going into the season, we looked at this edge rush group and we said, all right, this is not the most talented edge rush group. Where's the pass rush coming from? We knew that it would be a little bit of a work in progress, but for them to continue to play well, I think was really important for this team. And the most disappointing side of things, I'll flip over to the other side, and I was really disappointed by the Cardinals front seven. I think that this Washington offensive line, it's not terrible. They've been playing, I think, better than certainly I thought that they were going to play at the beginning of the year. Thought they were going to have to take a little bit of time to still get this better as a unit. But they did not have anybody in their front seven, the Cardinals that is, have a defensive grade above 61.5. And it's taken, some superstars here. Dennis Gardeck had a really good week 1 week. Zayvon Collins has been good. Roy Lopez had a good week. Sometimes like Kaiser White or Mac Wilson. Like it's been somebody's really been able to step up throughout the first couple of weeks of the season. This week, nobody did. And that can't happen, especially against a quarterback as good as Jaden Daniels. And so they were the most disappointing. most disappointing for you?
Just trenches on the offensive line. I know Kyler Murray's numbers have come down lately, but that also comes with a drop in pass protection. The first 2 weeks, they were 7th in the NFL in pass pro grade. In the last 2, it's been 19th. So for as much as Kyler can create and do those things out of structure, they need to protect him enough so he can do the things within structure. Because I think, through the first 2 weeks, we were impressed at the balance of both, and right now they're not getting it.
All right, next game that we got here, it is the Kansas City Chiefs taking a win on the road against the Los Angeles Chargers, 17-10. The Chiefs' top 5 graded players in this game: cornerback Jalen Watson at the top of the list with an 84.6, defensive tackle Chris Jones next with an 82.4, center Creed Humphrey with an 81.9, running back Kareem Hunt, new to being back with the team. I think that's probably the way to say it.
Sometimes you're new and old.
Right, I was going to say, like, new, old face for the team.
Back to the Future? I don't know.
Have you seen that movie? I know
Absolutely.
You don't watch movies.
That's on the short list of movies.
Okay, all right, just making sure. He had a Kareem Hunt at a 78.1 overall grade, and then rookie wide receiver Xavier Worthy with a 77.9, Patrick Mahomes a 79.9 in this game. And then on the other side of things for the Chargers, their 2 edge rushers, Khalil Mack and Tui Pelotu, were the top graded players in this one. Mack had an 85.3, Tui Pelotu with an 85.1. Wide receiver Lab McConkey, their rookie, 81.9 at number 3 on this list. Defensive tackle Poona Ford with a 77.6. Christian Fulton, their cornerback, 72.8 at number 5. And then Justin Herbert, just a 56.6. Playing hurt in this one, no doubt. Stat that told the story here. What do you got, Dalton?
Very simple. The Chargers had 55 rushing yards, and in their 2 wins,
it's my most disappointing.
Their 2 wins, they've had 176 and 219, and their 2 losses, they've had 61 and 55. Yes, they don't have Joe Alt or Rashawn Slater,
right,
and you're playing a very good Chiefs defense. It doesn't make it easier, but Jim Harbaugh has made it very clear this is a running team. We have to win running the football for now until we get more weapons in the future and some young guys develop. And in this game, even though they did get ahead, they got an early 10-0 lead, which should have made it slightly easier to run the ball, or at least that's the way you're tilting. They just weren't able to do it, and they're just not going to score a lot of points if they can't run the ball.
Yeah, that was the most disappointing for me. 115 rushing attempts through week 4. That's the 8th most in the NFL, yet they are worst in the NFL at a 51.3 rushing grade. It's been way too hot and cold. Obviously, it was pretty hot through those first 2 games. It's been really cold through these last 2 in weeks 3 and 4. So it's been tough because, like you said, they've got injuries, but this is going to be their identity no matter what. This is sort of what Jim Harbaugh also did during the beginning of his Michigan tenure, right? He set it up like this. He said, hey, and it sounds like I'm trying to say this is a coach coming in and saying, no, we're going to play our way, and he doesn't really care about the strength and weaknesses of the players. That's not what I'm saying, because I think Jim Harbaugh is a good coach, and he's not like that. But he does have a philosophy of what winning football is like, and he wants to win on the ground. And like you mentioned, not having the weapons in the passing attack that you could really just run that offense through, he is going to lean back on wanting to run the football. So that was the most disappointing for me, especially seeing that they have the lowest rushing grade in the NFL through 4 weeks, knowing that that's what their identity is supposed to be. The stat that told the story to me, it's sort of a weird one. This is more of a moving forward thing because this game was tough. I don't want to throw it out the window, but the Chargers were missing so many of their stars. Slater, they're out. Joey Bosa's out. Derwin James didn't play because he got suspended. Justin Herbert's hurt, right? It's like so many of these guys. This game's a totally different football game if those players play. So it's hard for me to really have too much of a takeaway there. What the stat that told the story for me, though, is one that's more of a looking forward, and that's no Rashee Rice for this team, because that knee injury for Rashee Rice looked bad, and there's nothing definitive. I haven't seen anything definitive yet, but it looks like he's going to miss a significant amount of time, if not the whole year. Hope not, but the Chiefs certainly hope not as well, because Rashee Rice has a 32.5% threat percentage. I mean, they're going to him a lot. He is the identity of their passing game right now. No other receiver on the team has a threat percentage above 15. He's 32.5. Nobody else, none of the other receivers have above 15%. So losing this guy, your entire offense changes. The entire thing.
It is not confirmed, but it seems there's whispers that it's a torn ACL.
Right, and obviously it kind of looks like it when you're watching it.
Yeah.
You hope not, but this is a situation where they were already sort of struggling for an identity, even when they had Rashee Rice, because it seemed like it was Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, kind of, but he hasn't looked as the way that we're used to him being. And then it's sort of, sprinkle in a little bit of Xavier Worthy whenever we can get the speed in there. But This is going to be tough for them without Rashee Rice. So that was my stat that told the story. Excuse me. You're most impressive in this one.
It feels like we talk about a Chiefs defensive back, a young defensive back every week. We'll go with the guy on the top of that top 5, and that's Jalen Watson. I think we've hit Trent McDuffie already. We've gotten Shamari Connor, I think, already at least once or somewhere. I think you had Josh Williams one week. We'll go Jalen Watson this week because they're just so stacked in the secondary that it's someone different every week. 31 coverage snaps, 5 targets, no catches, 3 forced incompletions, 91.1 coverage grade. That probably just about says it all. Just another spectacular player in their secondary. They just keep churning out defensive backs, and they all play great. I'm just waiting for the next one. One of those guys they drafted this year will be great too. But Watson, Jalen Watson, Josh Williams, Trent McDuffie. They just got so many kids in the secondary that are so good. Really, that's the part that's going to keep their season somewhat together here through these injuries.
I'll shout out Kareem Hunt for my most impressive. Coming back to the team, 69 rushing yards on 14 carries, 2 missed tackles forced, 2.7 yards after contact per attempt. World-beating numbers? No, but did they need him? Yes, because he was the most productive back that they had on this team, and obviously it's a one-score game in this one, and they really needed him here. Most disappointing. What do you got?
I know he's hurt, but he's out there. I kind of do need a little more from Justin Herbert. Right now, look, in this game, 16 to 27, 178 yards and a touchdown, and you saw the grade in the 50s. It's so conservative even in the passing game right now. I think the longest play was a slant that he threw to McConkey, and McConkey took like 30 yards after the catch. 31.3% air yards in this game is the 3rd lowest in his career. It's just you would hope sometimes, even with the run game and the conservative nature of this offense, that there'd be like deep shots and things. Justin Herbert's got one of the 2 or 3 best arms in the NFL.
Yeah, top 5
there's
for
just
sure.
Nothing vertical in this offense, and even him. And again, I know he's hurt, but right now, so we have our PFF quarterback charting, right? Only 53.9% of his passes that we're charting accurate right now. That's 27th out of 33 with at least 50 attempts, and he's got the ninth highest uncatchable pass rate. The accuracy is off, and again, the injuries probably have something to do with that.
Of course, yeah.
But it's just not all the way there. And I think that we had this idea that Jim Harbaugh is going to build the run game. Oh, by the way, he has Justin Herbert. That's going to be great. We'll wait till that combination gets going. And this was a game where they were up 10-0, then it was 10-7, then it was 10-10, and you were trying to find a moment where Justin Herbert just got enough in him for one more score, and it just never happened.
All right, let's go to Patriots 49ers next. We only got a couple of games left here. 49ers win this one convincingly, 30-13. We'll take a look at the top 5 graded players for San Francisco, and holy cow, the grades are through the roof. Starts with their linebacker, Fred Warner, at 96.6. Unbelievable. Edge rusher, Nick Bosa, 92.5. Great day for him as well. Offensive guard, Dominic Pooney. Look at him, the rookie, 85.8. Trent Williams, next on the list at number 4, 83.9. Wide receiver, Juwan Jennings with an 83.0. And then Brock Purdy, a 73.2. When you go to New England side of things, their safety, Jabril Peppers with an 85.0. Cornerback, Christian Gonzalez with an 80.4. Edge rusher, Keon White, 76.3. Offensive tackle, Mike Onwenu with a 75.0. And then safety, Kyle Duggar with a 70.8. Jacoby Brissett, not good. Opened up the door for some questions of, hey, is Drake May going to be the guy sooner rather than later? Is sort of tough when you talk about the Patriots O-line, which I guess I should start there because that's my stat that told the story, is when you look at this Patriots offensive line, we've already talked about how they're not good. They're super not good, really not good in this game.
They're actively trying their best to not put him in there.
I know. Yeah. And it's 21 pressures allowed this week. It's most in the NFL. 36.8 pass blocking grade as a unit, worst in the NFL. 53.8% of their dropbacks had a pressure that was recorded on it. You cannot win football games like that. And more importantly, you cannot put in your number 3 overall pick rookie quarterback behind an offensive line that is like this. So what we are really hoping happens is you sort of get a lot of these out of the way. Second half of the season, you can put Drake May in and let him learn behind a better offensive line in the second half of the season. We're halfway to that point, right? We're about halfway to that point.
They don't look any better.
They don't look any better. And Gerard Mayo was asked, hey, are you going to make a quarterback change? You're going to make a quarterback change. And he said, we're going to go back. We're going to look at the film. Right now, Jacoby is our quarterback. I feel bad for Gerard Mayo because I think that he would like to say, yes, we're going to go to Drake May. And I think that it is the job of the media people who are covering that team to, when the quarterback plays poorly, when there's no spark on offense, you say, hey, are you going to go to your number 3 overall pick to give you some spark? And he probably wishes he could tell them, I sure as hell wish I could.
I feel bad for Jacoby Brissett because you know how this is going to
happen. I do too. Because he also is not able to put his best foot forward.
At some point,
yeah.
and I hate to say it like this, but you just sit there and watch him and you go, when's he getting carted off?
Dude, honestly, I certainly hope not.
I hope not. You know, it's just, but it's like you just watch them block, and it's the whole bridge quarterback thing. It's why it's maybe the toughest job in football because you're already the guy that fans are waiting to get benched, and B, I mean, playing behind that blocking, it's going to be hard. If Brissett actually made it through all 17 games somehow, let's just say they got a whole year to redshirt May. They should double his salary for making it through. Honestly, I mean, it's just they're actively trying not to play the guy that's supposed to be the franchise quarterback, and to be honest, I can't blame them one bit.
Right, your stat that told the story here. You go right into that.
Yeah, I'll wrap it. It's kind of the same thing. Look, we know the Niners are better than the Patriots. Patriots 3.5 yards per play. It's just that simple. Their offense just not there. It's the lowest graded offense in football as of this recording. And look, 5.7 average depth of target, only 3 explosive plays all day. You got Antonio Gibson leading them in receiving yards, and I'll dip into my most disappointing because for this one I have to pick something, I guess, because there was nothing about this game that surprised me at all. So just Patriots wide receivers, it's the same thing on the outside as it is inside in the trenches. They just need somebody to step up. Jalen Polk has 30 yards. Demario Douglas has 13. KJ Osborne has 1 catch for 3.
Yeah.
There's nothing on the outside either. You're not getting open. We're not blocking people.
Right.
I mean, for as I guess disappointing is just what we have here, but none of it's particularly surprising. If this Patriots team goes out to San Francisco, they're going to lose 10 times out of 10. And we just kind of got the game that
we expected.
Yeah, and I don't even think the Niners played their A+ game in this game.
No, but the stars at least showed up.
At that point, you have 2 teams where one is just so much better than the other one.
Right.
They don't even have to.
Especially in the trenches. My most disappointing before I get to my most impressive, because it has to do with your stat that told the story. Ramondre Stevenson fumbling the football, man. 4 fumbles now this season. 1 in every single game so far this year. He had 4 career fumbles going into this season, and now he's matched that in 4 games, let alone 1 season. So that's been a disappointment there, although in week 1, certainly against the Bengals, he was a big reason why they were able to win. He's going to be a big reason why they're going to be able to win every single week, but the fumbles, that is a disappointing part of all this. Most impressive, Javon Hargrave out for most of the year, maybe the entire year, with partially torn triceps. Kevin Givens steps in his place at interior defensive line, and Givens, this past game, you saw him on the top 5 list, 35 defensive snaps, 78.8 defensive grade, 2.5 sacks, 4 pressures, 9.1 pass rush win percentage. So is the pass rush win percentage, incredible? No, but for him to be able to step in and for the 49ers to say, hey, next man up, we're good to go here after losing a guy like Javon Hargrave, really important for them on that defensive line. So I had to give Kevin Givens a shout out. What about you?
What kind of burner is Fred Warner on right now? I mean, that's... Jeez.
Defensive player of the year type of stuff.
Right now he would be, yeah. And the crazy part in this game, he had 7 tackles, a pick 6, and 4 run stops, and that 96.6 overall grade. He only played in the first half. He left with an injury.
Yeah.
Was it an ankle injury? I think it was.
I can't remember. Let me look it up.
I think it was an ankle injury. He did all of that in a half, and he was clearly the best player on the field, and he's clearly been the best player on the field in every one of their games. He is on a run right now. We haven't seen a linebacker win Defensive Player of the Year in a while, a true linebacker. I think Luke Kuechly was the last one. Warner right this minute, him and Aiden Hutchinson's in there too. Fred Warner would win it right now. I mean, the way he played in the Minnesota game, even though they lost, the way he played in this, it's every week. He's been their best player every single week. Fred Warner is on a burner right now, and for entertainment's sake, you hope he's healthy and that's not a serious injury because he's just been incredible. I'm almost speechless at how well he's playing.
Ankle injury for him, and hopefully it's not something where he misses a ton of time. Your most disappointing before we move on to the next.
Pat's weapons, they don't have any weapons either.
Yeah,
they're just not a whole lot going on there.
Not great. Not great. Football season, we're almost a fourth of the way through the season, believe it or not. And there's a lot of action to be able to keep up with every single week. It's a nonsense. They call it the greatest reality TV show of all time as well, because there's just so much that you have to catch up with and keep along with. But this season, we are going to be listening to a new podcast called The Offensive Line with Annie Agar. Annie is an NFL insider. You may know her from her Uncomfortable Team Meetings on Social series, but she's also now doing this podcast where she keeps up with a ton of that stuff. So you guys need to be watching and listening to it too. On the offensive line, she'll kick it back with NFL stars and celeb superfans throughout the whole year to go over every week's lines, odds, spreads, all that with, the usual sharp wit and banter that they're used to from her content. Pod is packed with tons of humor. Must listen every single week to keep up with all of the news in the NFL, as well as the NFL culture as well. You can follow The Offensive Line on the Wondery app or wherever you guys get your podcasts. You can also access bonus episodes as well and listen ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus. We got 2 more games. Browns-Raiders is the last one that we're talking about here for the Sunday games, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Giants-Cowboys to give you our thoughts there. But when it comes to the Browns and the Raiders, big bounce back here, win this game 20-16. We'll take a look at the Raiders' top 5 graded players. Tyree Wilson at the top of the list. Good for Tyree, man. 82.7 overall grade this past week. Defensive tackle Christian Wilkins right behind him with a 78.6. Safety Isaiah Polamau with a 78.2 overall grade as well, getting his first start. Running back Alexander Madison with a 75.8. And then tight end Harrison Bryant with a 75.7. Gardner Minshew with a 58.4 overall grade in this one. Flip to the other side for the Cleveland Browns. Linebacker Devin Bush with a 77.1, and then linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah with a 74.8. Running back Jerome Ford with a 74.8. Myles Garrett, one of his lower grades that you'll see from him, I feel like this season, 71.8, was bottled up pretty well. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy with a 70.7, and then Deshaun Watson, the top graded player for the Cleveland Browns, at an 86.0 despite them losing this football game. Stat that told the story here, Dalton. What was it?
It was kind of hard to find one because this was a weird game. It was like, I
felt like this game went exactly the way that we thought it was going to be. Whoever ran the ball better was going to win. Yeah, and guess what? The team that ran the ball better won the game by 4 points.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, and there was just a lot of this game where just like watching it, it was just like kind of like, because what was it? The Browns got ahead early. And then they gave it up, and then they got behind, and then it was a coming back. Or no, the Raiders got ahead early, didn't they?
I thought the Raiders got ahead early.
I watched a lot of these games this morning, so they all blend together when it's 6 a.m. But no, I mean it was weird, and I'm like,
no, you're right the first time.
I'm looking through it. I'm like, man, I don't feel like I'm getting a whole lot. You mentioned the run game too. I don't feel like I'm getting a whole lot out of this Browns defensive line that's supposed to be like their dominant unit, right? And Myles Garrett had 5 pressures and 2 sacks. He's always great because that's what he does. He was in that top 5. He's in that top 5 every week. The rest of the team though had 5 pressures altogether and no sacks. And and their defensive line, if I isolate it to the run D for their D line, a 67.2 run D grade. But there's a heavy part of that that's inflated with Isaiah McGuire forcing that fumble that they scored on. They scooped and scored it. I take out that one play, and their D-line run D grade was a 55.6. Like you just mentioned, the Raiders ran the ball more. The Raiders were the more physical team in this game. And the Browns' defensive line, look, we already know they have a hard time scoring. And Watson was really good in this game, and they still have a hard time scoring.
Right.
They need this defensive line to be the best unit on the field. And Myles Garrett was great, and he always is, but they need the whole thing. It's not just one guy. And these are some of the concerns that, when I looked at them playing in road games last year, was a problem, that it didn't always travel. It didn't travel in this one. Their D-line wasn't great as a unit in this game.
I sort of hinted at it. This is what I said in the preview on Thursday. Whoever runs the ball better is going to win the game.
It's a good call.
And that's exactly what happened. And it's not like one was really great at running the ball, one was really terrible, but the Raiders were better at running the football. Raiders, 75.9 rushing grade, 153 rushing yards, 8 missed tackles forced, 3.7 yards after contact per attempt. Take that against the Browns. 67.3 rushing grade, 92 rushing yards, 5 missed tackles forced, and 3.4 yards after contact per attempt. They were just slightly better, and they were slightly better on the scoreboard because of it. And so it's sort of this is the stat that told the story, but it's also my most disappointing as well, because the Browns, that was sort of my most disappointing. you had the ability to win this game if you would have run the football a little bit better, but they just didn't. And that was, to me, always going to be the identity of this game. Deshaun Watson had his best game yet in 2024, which was a good sign for them, but it wasn't enough because it feels like even with him playing better ball, you've got to be able to run the ball a lot better than what Cleveland's been doing over the last, I think, 4 weeks. And that showed up with them losing this football game that I think was absolutely winnable for them. And you were right the first time. Browns were up 10-0 in this game. And you have a little bit better of a run game, I think they come away with a win, and they just were not able to do so. But what about you? Most impressive, most disappointing? Who you got?
I got to go to just this Raiders pass rush as a unit. You had this weird dynamic in this game where the Browns were missing 3 and for a stretch then 4 starters on their offensive line, but the Raiders were missing Max Crosby and Malcolm Koonce is done for the year, who was really their number 2 pass rusher. So, look, credit to the entire unit. Okay, Tyree Wilson was their highest graded player.
Yep.
Raiders pass rush, 52.4 pass rush win rate. All right. Adam Butler on the inside, 7 pressures and a sack. Tyree Wilson, 5 pressures. Charles Snowden, 4 pressures and a sack. Christian Wilkins had 4 pressures. Kayvon Chason had multiple pressures, former first-round pick. This unit stepped up because there's a lot of times where I was really worried when Malcolm Koonce has now a season-ending injury. But now Max Crosby's out for a game, and anytime Max Crosby's out, you start to get worried. Okay, who's rushing the passer? Well,
right.
In this game, as a unit, they came together for as much as the Browns' pass rush did not, even with their star player in there. The Raiders found a way to get to Watson. Watson had a good game, but their D-line really put him under a lot of duress and made it so he at least didn't have time to beat them vertically. So, I thought big step up. You meant, again, Tyree Wilson developing into what he was supposed to be as the
they need it. They need it
in the worst way.
Yep.
I mean, he's a guy, especially take him 7th overall, struggled a lot last year. He really did. And I know he's a project. He has a lot of physical skills. This is the type of game he specifically can build on. But, this Raiders team, they're always looking for pass rush depth. Mm-hmm. And you found it in this game. And if you can find it when Crosby is on the field, you still got a pretty good defense.
My most impressive, because I already talked about most disappointing, I just went back and forth with the run game, but Raiders safety Isaiah Polamao, he was awesome. Getting his first start because Marcus Epps is out for the season, had a season-ending knee injury last week against Carolina, so Polamao is stepping in, and I just loved what I saw from him, man. He had a really great performance. 57 defensive snaps. That was tied for the most on the team, so they leaned on him a lot. 6 tackles, 2 solo stops, 1 forced incompletion. He's the nephew of Troy Polamalu as well, for anybody out there that did not already know that. And he would just listening to how he was talking about getting ready for his first start and how excited he was and how well he was able to play. Him and Trayvon Merrick back there, because Merrick had a pick as well. He's having a really nice season. That's a really nice safety duo that they have back there, or at least certainly it was against the Browns. So wanted to shout out Polamao as one of the top players in this game. He was one of the top 5 graded players in the game, and he had some of the biggest plays, including that pass breakup on a really good pass to Jerry Jeudy that could have changed everything that he was able to make a difference on. So loved him really being able to stand out in his first start. But what about you? What's your most disappointing before we move on?
This sounds kind of bad, but I'm going to do it. Any Cleveland Brown not named Deshaun Watson or Myles Garrett. This is a game you have to step up and find a way to win. And I know you got offensive line injuries, but this was an ugly game. I know the Raiders ran the ball well, but we keep hearing about, do the Browns have a top 10 roster? Do they have a top 5 roster? Do they have Deshaun Watson had, what was it, an 88 point something passing?
It was 86.0 overall grade. I can't remember what the
I think his passing grade was somewhere around an 88. This was Deshaun Watson, at least before the grading. I know it's not flashy stats. This was his best game as a Brown, and they found a way to lose it anyway. And I think they only scored 10 points on offense. They just need to be better than this. If Watson's going to play well and they're still going to lose games, I don't really know. I don't know what to tell him. And I know, again, the offensive line injuries killed him in this game. The Raiders' D-line won this game in the trenches. This is a game I actually thought the Browns would go in and win this game with with Crosby out,
right,
and with the Raiders coming into this week, I believe being last in the NFL in rushing.
Yes,
that's kind of disturbing that they still found a way. To me, it's disturbing that they found a way to lose this game for all of the talent that we keep saying and hearing. Oh, the Browns have all this talent, and they're supposed to make the playoffs, and they're just now you go. This is a week. Now we've seen a week where the quarterback was functional. and the rest of the team wasn't. That's a problem.
That's the toughest part for the Browns, is that you've just been begging Deshaun Watson to be good, and he was, and it still was not good enough for this team. They are constantly, the Browns are just constantly this year going to be that team that always plays their level of competition, right? I mean, it was a multi-score game against the Cowboys in week 1, but then one-score game against the Jags, one-score game against the Giants, one-score game against the Raiders. Now, they got the Commanders next, and if they can keep up with the Commanders, I think that'll tell us that this can be a competitive team throughout the year. But if they get blown out by the Commanders, then all of a sudden we go, oh, okay, you did not fare well against the Cowboys in week 1.
Do we have any reason to think the Browns would beat them the way Washington's playing?
No. But I'm saying competitive. Like if you keep it a one-score game, then we can still sort of believe in the Browns a little bit and Kevin Stefanski, how he's going to have this team prepared. But if you lose to the Commanders, all of a sudden the picture of the season gets very different. Because if it's close against the Commanders, you could just say they're not going to blow anybody out at any point in time. They're also not going to get blown out at any point in time. So you could have a little bit of faith that they're always going to be in every single game. But if they lose by double digits or 2 scores or more to the Commanders, well, all of a sudden you lost by 16 to the Cowboys then. You'd lose to whatever you lost to with the Commanders coming up. And then you go, all right, we got lost to the Giants. We got lost to the Raiders. And our only win is against the Jags. So, I don't know. Yeah, I think next week's a big telling week for what the type of team the Cleveland Browns are going to be.
That's fast.
Last game that we're talking about is the Thursday Night Football game. We can kind of run through this one pretty quickly because it was so many days ago. But Dallas wins this one 20-15 over the New York Giants. Take a look at the top 5 graded players for the Dallas Cowboys. Number 1 on the list. Look at him. You love to see it. After Mozzie Smith, we came on this show and we talked about it on the Trenches show as well. Mozzie Smith was having a terrible season. Just he was not efficient at all. He was bench-worthy, his play, over the last couple of weeks and some points the last season as well. Top-graded player for the Cowboys, including in run defense. Love to see that bounce back from Mozzie Smith. 88.4. Cowboys desperately needed him to play as well as he did. Wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, 79.6. Linebacker DeMarvion Overshown with a 77.7. Guard Tyler Smith, 77.4. And edge rusher Micah Parsons with a 72.8. Dak Prescott with an 83.0 overall grade in this one. Flipping sides, the New York Giants, linebacker Micah McFadden with a 78.4 overall grade. Safety Jason Pinnock with a 77.6. Offensive tackle Andrew Thomas with a 75.6. Wide receiver Malik Neighbors, 72.5. Safety Tyler Nubin, 71.3. And Daniel Jones, an 80.9. Okay, Daniel. What was the stat that told the story?
The Giants just not scoring any touchdowns and not finishing drives. You've got a team that has to execute at a high level. They don't have enough talent to have a big margin for error. And one of the issues is they don't create any explosives, right? And unless it's Malik Neighbors getting loose, they don't have any. They just don't have it. And even Daniel Jones, as good as that grade is, and as good as he was throwing in that 15-ish yard bubble, 1 for 6 on deep balls, and the one deep ball he completed was the one where Malik Neighbors just toasted Andrew Booth on. And I'll be honest with you, even that ball was behind Neighbors. He throws that ball in stride, he scores. It's an 80-yard touchdown. Daniel Jones, he was good in this game. But there's a limit. There's a limit to what he could do. 1 for 6 on deep balls. And there's no explosive runs. And look, 6 drives where they ran at least 8 plays, and they didn't score a touchdown.
Yeah.
And those 6 drives, you got 5 field goals and a turnover on downs. They're not explosive. And they just, everything's so plodding. And it's I hate to be like this with Daniel Jones, and he was good in this game. He really was, because the Giants had 0 run game, and you're getting into that. But the ceiling here is so obvious.
Yeah.
That it's just how many, if he hits 3 or 4 of those deep balls instead of 1, they win the ball game. Like, no question.
Giants run game is the stat that told the story for me because it's non-existent. No running back with a rushing grade over 58.0, negative 0.205 EPA per rush this season. That's 30th in the NFL. They have a 1.1 yards per carry average this past Thursday against Dallas. Not going to get it done. It's just straight up not going to get it done. That's not how this team is built. The Giants will not win football games with the run game as bad as it has been, certainly as it is on Thursday. That's why you see 15 points. That's why you see no touchdowns, because they have to be a team that runs the football. That's where they are at this point. Daniel Jones has got to be a dual threat player for him. They've got to have legitimate rushing options. And I'll get into I'll just go right off the bat here with most impressive and most disappointing, because it sort of ties into what somebody in the chat said as well. My most impressive is Mazi Smith. I already brought it up. 88.5 overall grade, 86.5 run defense grade. Both of those are career highs for Mazi Smith over the last 2 years. Something that I feel like he did differently in this game. In previous games, I feel like they have had Mazi Smith when he has been run defending. He's sort of been asked to hold the line of scrimmage. That's not really the type of interior defensive lineman he is. This week, it felt like specifically they said, okay, defend the run by getting into the backfield. Defend the run by attacking. And he was able to do that. And Man Ray in the chat said that John Michael Schmitz made Mazi Smith look like Dexter Lawrence. And unfortunately, they are correct. Like that, it was bad. I mean, John Michael Schmitz had a terrible day. And to have a really bad day against somebody who has not been a good run defender so far throughout the first 2 seasons of his career is not a good look for Michael Schmitz. So it was just not a good game overall for the Giants offensive line. And I think that takes me into my most disappointing as I rattle them off here. Brian Daboll era. He's 18 and 21 in the last 3 seasons. The record just continues to look worse and worse from him for that first year that they were able to make the playoffs. It was bad last year. It looks even worse this year. And you could tell that he's frustrated. You could see it in the post-game press conferences. You could see it like throughout the week when he gets asked questions of the offense and what to do and things like that. He's frustrated. I think the whole team is frustrated, but it does not feel like they're going in a direction where Brian Daboll is going to be the coach much longer of this team. And that sucks because I think he's going to be a good offensive coordinator wherever he goes next. But we'll do a deep dive into this at some point if this ends up being something that happens where they end up moving on from some key players of this regime. But it stinks that it's kind of ending this way for Brian Daboll, because I think more of him as a head coach, but he looks frustrated, and the Giants don't look like they have a lot of answers in this season.
I think Daboll's a really good coach. I do think this team is short on talent still, and they even added some talent this offseason. Right. Obviously, Neighbors is special and something to build around. But I think
he was dealt a really tough hand, and I don't want to just take away all blame from him. But that sucks that this is where he is.
That playoff season was an outlier.
Right.
In that regular season, they were the 4th lowest graded team in football. They found ways to win games, and now they're finding ways to lose them. Yeah, but even that playoff team was not the most talented team in the league.
Most impressive and most disappointing.
Most impressive, Dak Prescott. He got him through this one. I don't feel, as a team, I don't feel a whole lot better about the Cowboys than I did before this game. Prescott and CeeDee Lamb are at least the 2 constants, and he was good when they went standard rush. He was good against the blitz. He was good against any coverage. He was 22 of 27, 2 touchdowns, 2 big-time throws. They went, for some reason, against CeeDee Lamb, the Giants went man coverage early in the game, and he beat that. After the CeeDee Lamb touchdown, the Giants went zone and backed off, and Dak beat that. It was actually his lowest average depth of target since week 2 of last season. Made the adjustments, saw coverages, played a very veteran style of quarterback. He was the reason they won this game. Most disappointing, I know a lot's been made of the Cowboys' run defense better in this game. And now the secondary, too, is still just not great. A 57.4 coverage grade as a team in this game, which isn't horrible, isn't great. But if you take out the 2 interceptions they had, actually one of them didn't even count, and one was on a Hail Mary. It's not great in coverage. And if you can't, I know Malik Neighbors is great, but if you can't cover a team like the Giants, or really any of the last 3 weeks, over the last 3 weeks, okay, we talk about right now the Cowboys are the lowest graded defense in football. Most of that, yes, is their run defense. But first game against the Browns, their secondary was great. Mm-hmm. It's the Browns. Last 3 weeks, they're 30th in coverage grade. Damn. It's the defense. It's all the way around. And maybe it gets better whenever Deron Bland gets back and he's healthy. But it's not just up front. And now you've got more stress in coverage. You've got Lawrence and Parsons both injured. And I think Lawrence certainly, is going to be an extended absence. And Parsons, I think they said they weren't really sure yet on Parsons. Mm-hmm. If you don't have those 2 guys and there's time in the pocket for whoever, Cowboys have an absolutely brutal schedule coming too. It's what's their next 6 games real quick? Hang on. Your next 6 games are Pittsburgh, Detroit, San Fran, Atlanta, Philly, Houston, and actually a 7th one, Washington.
Philly looks easier, but you sub in the Washington game. Yeah.
You're playing. The Steelers aren't an elite offense, but they've got the defense. They don't need to score. And then you've got some elite offense. And honestly, if the Eagles by then, that's week 10, You're going to have Brown and Smith back by week 10. There'll be something. And Barkley. I mean, you're playing this run of big-time teams and big-time offenses. You better start being able to cover.
Yep. There we go. Thursday Night Football and all of the Sunday games written up and reviewed here on the PFF NFL show. Appreciate everybody watching. Our review coverage will continue. We got 2 more games. Will Levis, which is the most entertaining ticket in all of the NFL, still plays tonight. And then what I think is a fantastic matchup of the Seattle Seahawks and the Detroit Lions as well to round out week 4. We're going to have the In the Trenches show as well as the quarterback show as well coming for you tomorrow. So we're going to take a look at some impactful trench play around the NFL. It could be offensive line, defensive line, singular performances, all that good stuff with Ollie Conley, and then myself and Seth Galina are going to take a look at some impactful quarterback performances as well. For the rookie review episode with myself and John Ledyard coming out on Wednesday, we are going to be giving you our early top 5s for offensive and defensive rookie of the year. So excited to kind of look at some of the top performers from around the NFL and officially order them here. Appreciate everybody watching and listening, getting involved in the chat, watching on Twitter as well as YouTube. For Trevor Sikkema and Dalton Wasserman, we will see you guys same time next week.